that note, let's get right into it. Let me do the formalities. Let's introduce another episode of the Group Up podcast. We're here for the great BlizzCon debate, as those of you who've been watching in the various streams as an early preview have already probably heard. I have with me 4 awesome guests, all of whom alongside me were at BlizzCon, and I hope you guys enjoyed it too. So let me introduce my guests, and then we'll discuss everything that was announced and whether we're excited, doomer, or somewhere in between. In the top right is my man Flats. Flats, what's up?
I dodged super COVID, so we're winning.
I think so far everyone has dodged super COVID. I know Fareeha in the bottom left was a little bit down, but how are you feeling today, Fareeha?
I'm feeling good. I was at the hospital for some lung issues, but my test came back and everything's clear. It's just a bunch of lung trauma. So
Oh
I'm
shit.
kind of riding that out. Yeah.
Goddamn trauma, man. Nothing we do, we can dodge the trauma. But I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you were there, and I'm glad you're here. It was lovely. We spent a lot of time together, Free and I. We had a good time. Some bestie moments. I know bestie moments with SK, who I hope is having fun doing her hero mastery grinding. In the bottom right is my man Freedo. Avatar mode today. Freedo, how you doing?
Yes, happy, excited, optimistic. My favorite game. Looking on the right direction nowadays. So I'm in a good mood.
Awesome. And here for his first appearance on the Group Up podcast, finally, the GOAT himself, the nicest guy around. It is Emongg, the legendary, once former tank duo Flats. Now, see you again riding solo, Fast and Furious style. How you doing, Emongg?
It's good to be here. You said it's been a while since we've been trying to get this going, and I'm ready to talk some Overwatch because that's what we're doing. We're talking Overwatch. That's what this is about.
That's true. That's what I heard. I heard we're here to talk Overwatch. So let's talk Overwatch then, guys. BlizzCon. Freedo already gave us a little bit of his feelings. He was very optimistic for those of you who missed it. Before we read directly into the stream, he was saying, the tone of the communication from all the Blizzard games has really shifted, where previously maybe they were a bit more rock and roll or a bit more like, yo, we're fucking badass and come on down. You think you want it, but you don't. But this time they were a little bit more chill. They were a bit more, hey guys, we really appreciate your feedback, really appreciate the love you've given us, and we're listening to you guys, and we love you. So I'm going to go to Emongg first as his first appearance on the podcast. Emongg, what was let's just get opening thoughts from everyone. Like, what was your overall impressions for BlizzCon as a whole, and also particularly for what was talked about with Overwatch?
I enjoyed BlizzCon. I mean, obviously, like, my experience might be a little bit different because I spent 95% of it streaming in like a booth, which was really cool. Like, it was very, very fun. It's my first event in like 4+ years, which it's really crazy to think about that, because that was like the last time we've even had a BlizzCon, and the vibe then, as we've talked about, is a little bit different. I enjoyed it. I obviously there's going to be the issues in general, like like the lines. There was issues with that. There was getting sometimes the security would send you to like random lines in different places, and people were having issues with that. Like, there's going to be that type of stuff, but the overall vibe of it, and I've seen it in pretty much every game, people are excited. And I love to see that. There's not like people are going, oh, like I know Flats has been saying this a ton, where he goes, oh, we're so back. But I've literally been seeing WoW players and streamers saying we're back, because like the BlizzCon was just an exciting moment for all the games there. And I think like that part of me is obviously there's a lot changing, especially starting in January. So for the company, it was really cool to see them like have an awesome BlizzCon that people could really enjoy. And I talked about it before, like the last BlizzCon when I went to it, it was very much, you had seats all in like a row. Like, it was just like all in one area. And then you had the sections for the game, but they're kind of like all over the place. This one was cool because every single section had its own vibe. You walked into the Overwatch section, and I didn't even get to check out the WoW. Apparently the WoW and Diablo ones were amazing. Apparently they were top tier, right? But every single area had its own vibe, which was really cool. But I had a great time. And then the stuff they announced for Overwatch, I mean, we talk about feedback. It's really, I love their presentation of how they like presented stuff, especially after two. They're like, yeah, so we're not doing this anymore. Just put a giant X on the screen. Like, this ranked, you like this ranked? There's an X right there. Like, I love that they went back there, looked at like a lot of the feedback of ranked, which we can all agree, ranked at the start of Overwatch 2 was not in a good spot, right? And a lot of people who played Overwatch 2, that's what they wanted. They go in, they play the new style, right? You're gonna have your talks about balance, but to have ranked is one of those core things that you need, right? People are gonna play quick play and enjoy, but then you also have the other half that's gonna play ranked. And the rank system was just not like I don't know if I'm describing it correctly, but the feedback loop wasn't really that good for ranked. You just played ranked, and SK had a great video. She did a great video on it. Where like you got to like 6 losses, and you didn't even have those wins yet. You just know you're just resetting to try to get back to that again. You don't know why you're going 5-2 and not ranking up. You don't know why you're going 5-0 and ranking down. So you have all these issues with ranked. When you look at the screen, you're kind of like, yay, I'm 4-1 now. I just got to go win one more game, which sometimes in rank can be a journey in itself, right? So
Right.
I love that they looked at that and said, you know what? We're not doing this anymore. This is just not good. And we all know Gavin by now. I guarantee you for the last 6 months when we're sitting here complaining about ranked on stream, Gavin's going, no, we're fixing it, but he can't say anything because they have to prepare it for BlizzCon to be able to get this ready. So I love they announced that. I love that they showcase more stuff because a lot of the time, and Freedo was talking about this at BlizzCon, they've always kind of just like showed you like 1 or 2 things. This time around, they showed us Freedo Heroes. WoW showed 3 new expansions and what they have planned for Classic with Seasons of Discovery and Cataclysm. Diablo, I'm gonna be honest, they showed the expansion, right? So it went from them not showing anything, talking about anything, to them showing like a bunch of stuff for the next year. And I love that because that's the stuff that people need to see rather than like, guess what? Mauga's coming out next month. Enjoy. And when we post a blog post in February, you're going to be excited for our next thing.
Right.
And I like that they let off with that. That's why I think the vibe is a lot different. Obviously, I'm going to be generally optimistic about it. I mean, I stream Overwatch, so there's a bit of bias there.
Right.
But I really do like the direction that I'm seeing. And in the words of Flats, we're so back.
We're so back. We're so back. No, there's so many
What
good
have
points.
what have I done?
I know. What have you done, Flats? I mean, that. Be prepared, dude, because that screenshot is gonna float around for a while. I'm sure BP's got it saved with like 10 different
Good.
backups.
I'll do it again.
on
I'll go
every
both
cloud.
ways. I have no fear. I've done it a bajillion times. I did it at the start of Overwatch too. I'll do it again. It doesn't scare me.
Good, good. So there's a lot we'll touch on in full detail. The rank mode or the rank changes, Mauga, the 2 new heroes that were shown, Clash. But again, Flats, you tell me, are we so back? What were your general overall impressions of BlizzCon as a whole?
Well, it was my first BlizzCon ever, right? So I had to get like little gauges of like leaning over, like, is this normal? Well, you know, like is this kind of like how it's supposed to be? But I would say that the biggest takeaway for me personally, was mostly that it was kind of like a culmination of the last 8 months of bullshit being like, yep, you guys are right. Okay, we're fixing it. We're doing these things. We're trying to fix these things over here. Whether it was ranked, whether it was matchmaking, whether it was like the idea of adding a new ranked. Remember at the beginning of Overwatch 2, everyone was like, yep, there's some crazy rank inflation. And of course, you have those people that are come back and are like, well, you're just shitting on someone's accomplishment. No, that's not what they're trying to do. I promise you, and this is not from an ego standpoint. I promise you, I can tell the difference between a GM1 Overwatch 2 player and a GM1 Overwatch 1 player. They're not even fucking close. And it's like the knowledge that they have has been built up through 7 years. You can't compete with that. And like there are really good mechanically skilled players that like may have gotten into GM that were like new to the game, or you know, maybe played very long ago and then came back. They just don't have like these little niche knowledges. Like I can tell, like I don't even play Sigma, right? Like I'm not a very good Sigma. Like, and I can say this more recently, because for 2 years Emongg always played the fucking Sigma, so like I had to learn. But like I can tell for a fact when I play against someone who like is newer to Overwatch on Sigma, because like they don't put a shield up before they go for their suck, right? Like they'll put their shield up and then they'll put it down and go for it, and I still have rock. I'm like, boop, and just knock them over. I'm like, what the fuck was the point of that? It's like little, like very small things that like you've learned over like 3 or 4 years of just letting it happen to you over and over and over and over and over and over that they might not have learned. So it's like, well, how do you make this spot where like, you know, maybe players that are a little bit better aren't grouped together with players that maybe aren't as good, but like you're at the top rank, so you're right out of room. So like adding a whole new rank was something that people brought up, and now they're doing it, and it's like, holy shit! Like, are we gonna have like an Apex Predator of Apex, or you know, like a challenge? Like I remember this was a thing in Siege. So like I'm a former Siege player. The highest rank used to be Diamond for a very long time, and then they added a rank beyond that, and that made the game much more challenging and much more competitive. And of course, like there's still questions about like top 500 and grouping restrictions and stuff like that. But like even the grouping restrictions, like they might not be in the new, what was it, ultimate rank or whatever. It might not be in there because they said like we're removing most grouping restrictions. But if it's GM all the way through bronze, like that opens up the game to most players again, because like nothing sucked more than you just couldn't play with your friends, right? Like how ass is it that you can't play with your friends in a video game, like in especially a game that is touted as a team-based competitive shooter? And it's like, you don't have resources most of the time. You're not going to go on a random Discord half the time or Reddit and like find some people to queue with. You want to play with your friends. That's what you want to do. And so like those small things like really bring life back to a game. And like it looks like it's kind of copied from Valorant, and that's okay. Like we kind of wanted that. So I feel like Blizzard of old, and I use this example, would have given us hero pools instead of hero bans.
Mm-hmm.
If you remember, you remember. And it's like the second hero pools didn't work. It's like, see, we told you didn't want that. It's like, no, that's all we asked for, It's like, so it was a very nice, holy shit, like it looks like things are changing. It looks like a lot of the feedback is being taken. And I hope I don't get in trouble for this, but we had devs come by our booth a lot of time and they're like, what did you guys think? Like, did you guys like the presentation? Like, is this like everything like you guys thought was like, is there anything else that maybe we missed? It's like, you guys just showed us all this stuff and you're like, hey, is there more that we can do? And it's like, what the fuck? Like, I ain't used to that. You know what I mean? So I liked it overall, like a lot. So we're so back. Yeah.
We're so back. We're so back. It does seem like a whole new world. I mean, we don't want to huff the copium too hard or dare we get the accusations of shilling. But Fareeha, did you share? I know. Did you share the optimism of Flats and Emongg?
Oh man, yes. So I have had the luck to speak with a bunch of devs about this and their thoughts on how things feel internally. And the overall atmosphere is so optimistic, even for them. It's like, do you know that scene in Naruto where Rock Lee gets to take the ankle weights off? It's like that. It's literally like that. And I think it's important to remember that there have been like these big changeovers in Team 4 and in like at Blizzard in general. And so a lot of the people who were there in the old days, who were there for the the content drought and everything bad going on then, have gone away, and it's like a completely new team trying to like turn over a new leaf. And they're finally getting the chance to do that because there's like less of that executive meddling on the horizon. And so you feel it on that level, and it's in the level that they talk to us. Like I don't know if you guys feel this either, but like for me, it felt like there was a big change when the Creator Summit started happening, and just the way that they would talk to us and give us these chances to be like on the same level and discuss things and like ask us what we thought, and it felt like they were genuinely listening. And yeah, no, it feels fantastic. When I saw that big X over the ranked cards, I was like, let's go, thank you, SK.
Can I actually cut in really quick after that, just to like
Go for it,
expand on
go
what
for it.
something Fareeha just said?
Oh,
So
go
like
for
you
it.
guys,
Hello guys, SCB here, and the Group Up podcast is back, and I'd like to take just 30 seconds of your time to talk to you about two quick things. Firstly, Patreon. If you enjoy the content, then please do consider supporting directly, because Patreon takes only about 10% of the money you give, where YouTube and Twitch take 40 and 50% respectively. So if you'd like to support the podcast, then that is the best way to do so. Secondly, if you're someone who enjoys video essays or detailed analysis of movies, TV, or anime, then please do check out my second channel, The Soak, where I'll be making videos about those kind of topics much more frequently, and where a lot of my attention will go beyond just Overwatch. It would mean the absolute world to me if you guys would check it out. But that's it for now. Let's head back to the discussion.
I didn't go to this last Creator Summit, right? Like, you know me, I don't like traveling. I hate it.
That's true.
It's fucking ass. But I went to the first one, and I will say, at the first one was really good because we learned a lot about upcoming game. But I know a lot of and there's some devs that know about this, and some people that were there saw me do it. I got in some really long arguments with some people there, and I wasn't like antagonizing. I was like genuine, like, hey, I don't think this is gonna work. And one of them was the rank system. Okay, and some of them are still there, and they'll probably see this and they're gonna laugh because we went into it for like 45. Remember, like when we got that like lunch break, we're like, oh yeah, you guys go like, go for a walk, go sit. No, I went in and like we sat there for like 45 minutes, like talking about like why I didn't think the rank system was gonna work. But like not even just them, but like overall, it was like, oh, we're like being more open to you guys, but we're not really changing anything. Like it's like we're here to show you everything that's coming, but like we still think it's the right way, which is like kind of changed, right? Because like after that first summit, that's the vibe that it felt like. It's like we got more info. They let us in on things, but we had no feedback, no input. They didn't want community input. They're like, we're just letting you know ahead of time to like let you know. And to me personally, and I was very vocal about this, I felt like in a lot of ways we were used as marketing pawns, like marketing tools, right? And that's why going into Overwatch 2, there was a lot of people that thought, a lot of creators, SVP, you made the joke of shilling, because I know you were one of the people that was talked about it. There was a lot of people that were talked about as shills, right? And then once everyone flips the script and is like, well, now we're not listened to, and it's like nothing's improving and it's going the opposite direction. Well, now you're doomers, right? So like that's why I want to say like it's very important to make the distinction here, because like that first creator summit was the first like opening of the doors, but like no changes were happening. But I agree with Fareeha, like now it's more like not only are the doors open, but now there's a conversation that has started to like make things improved, not just like a glass window where we get to look in and peer through it and see where things are, which is a massive change since last year, and part of the reason why I think it's so hopeful,
Yeah, so this I definitely agree with this sentiment. I think a lot of people have wondered about like what is there a real change in leadership, and of course people always nostalgize Jeff. I mean, I think at this BlizzCon as well, I saw lots of people being like, "Oh man, I wish Jeff was there on the stage." And while undoubtedly he was very charismatic and a great leader for the game, you can totally see now, given time and given that the impending shackles of Activision are about to be lifted, the new Overwatch team is starting to get their hands on the whole project, right? It was like piece by piece. Okay, we're gonna go free to play, which again I don't think Jeff would have been a fan of. We're gonna start communicating more, which Jeff was never really seemingly a fan of. And now this whole like two-way feedback system, right? Where it's like we give our community info, they give us info, we kind of relate often. I think these are all definitely indicators of the new era perhaps that we're entering. But again, we don't want to oversell it. I'm sure everyone will be quick to point out that results are important. So to that end, Freedo, let's talk some of the tangible things that were shown. Like I said, you kind of gave a little bit of your overall view of BlizzCon, so feel free to kind of chime in again on how you felt, particularly about the Overwatch section. But I'd love to now get into, I think, the first big piece of news, which was Mauga. I know I'm not going to pronounce it right, but how did you feel about Mauga? And I think also the fact that they immediately dropped the hero for everyone to play was really cool. I think that was something I don't think we've seen before, where they're just like, yeah, we're announcing him and here you go right now, off you go play him, and everybody got to play it. So did you get to play him, and what did you think about him?
Yeah, I played him a lot actually. So here's another aspect that I think is going to be perhaps not noticed for what it really is, but in that transition from the Jeff era, but also let's say the Activision era, it's hard to really know what the difference is in terms of these decisions. But I know for a fact that the Bobby Kotick era was to hold and withhold certain information in order to make its maximal impact later on, just in case that there was some reason to raise the stock price at a key moment. It's like that's the way he played the game, right? So
Hate that.
at the same time, like I feel bad about it. Let me just take a step back. I don't think we've mentioned the whole like Witch is dead issue here with Bobby stepping down. And because I think the entire tone of all of the company being different is because of that, because he's not there meddling in order to try to maximize the flow of information in the way that he mad genius thinks is going to manipulate the conversation. And I think being a Blizzard fan my life, it's like I have seen this company be transformed from the sweetheart devs that have made some of the greatest PC games specifically of all time into that being packaged and marketed, and these poor guys pushed onto stage to sell cell phone versions of the game that they make and stuff like that. It's like Bobby weaponized the love that all the fans had for many years and cashed that in because he packaged the information that he knew they wanted at certain beats in order to combat other drama that was going on. You can't do that now because now they just told you the next year of stuff coming. Okay. Like rather than worry about the exact moment it's going to come out, they're like, well, here's what we're thinking. We might change it. This is so the whole scope of all of the games feel like that. Now to Overwatch, they would want to be more precious about when certain things come out. And now that because they're losing their momentum to some degree for the next season, which has the hero, and maybe like trialing a hero is like kind of a risky thing because they would prefer to put it behind a paywall and say like, which it is still, but like just buy the thing, right? Here he's out, he's awesome, buy it, impulse purchase, right? Whereas now you could try him. Like imagine if you tried him and you thought he wasn't fun. Well, then maybe you're not going to buy him in the next season. Like if they mess that up, right? There's a lot of risk there that they don't have to do. But they went ahead and are changing that. Like it's a big evidence that things are changing, that they did something generous, right? Somewhat seemingly generous. It's, not ultimately not giving the hero for free or anything, but it's different from the very withholding nature of like clouded in mystery era. Like we're finally seeing some transparency with like knowing. We've never knew multiple heroes in advance. That's never happened. And Mauga himself, so releasing like that, I think it was really, really cool. And I think he's just like a fun Overwatch character. And as I start to add these up, I feel they've done a great job with the mechanics of all the new characters, actually. And a lot of the issues that you might criticize, I kind of see as strengths. It's like I actually like solo tanking in Overwatch 2, whole nother debate. But the play styles that different characters have are somewhat homogenous, but also not. It's like you could make some arguments that I'm just going to call him Mauga. I'm not going to attempt Mauga, I think is how you're supposed to say it. But you
Mangwa or
could,
something like that. Yeah.
we're going to be like, well, he's kind of like Roadhog, and he's kind of like Junker Queen, and he's kind of like this, and he's kind of like that. But like his moves are different. It's like this is the real version of a like playstyle overlap, but new abilities. It's like, yes, he kind of does similar things to other heroes, but he does them in such a unique, cool way. We're getting the like MOBA development that some of us thought was going to be a good thing, and I still think it is a good thing because there's no way that Mauga like breaks the game other than his stats being broken. He's just a fun guy. He does fun things as a tank, and we could say it's like too easily countered or not going to be top tier viable, but like that doesn't matter to me. I just want the kit to feel good to play, because when you look at the previous game, it's like they killed it with the original cast of heroes, but there was a lot of hero releases that were just like kind of questionable. And the reason why I think they were is because, and Aaron said this in an interview recently, they're finally owning the fact that this is a hardcore PvP game. Whereas in Overwatch 1, they were trying to like, well, what if you don't want to have skill to outplay dive? What if you just didn't? What if you just had an aura to be like, no, in general? And we've got a balance of that now. Like I would argue, like I don't mind how powerful supports are at the moment. They could be a bit weaker, but it's like I don't go crazy over Suzu or Lamp or just existing, right? Like I think it can be included in the game, but now it's like it the game's like balanced in that way where it's not all goats or all one thing. There's a lot of crazy sustain, but there's also a guy running in and slamming you with an earth shatter. Like Mauga would never be in Overwatch 1, by the way. Like it just not in a million years. Like he's got one effect that applies another effect. Then he has a movement skill that boops you, but if you wait till the last second, it earth shatters you. And like it's so complicated what he can do. It fits Overwatch 2, and so it sort of feels like the culmination point to me of the game fully realizing itself. It's like, this is what the game is. We're not clouded in mystery with the expectations of an extra game on top of it. It's like we're leaning into what this game is. All right, I went kind of wide on there, but
no,
that's
I
all
like that a
have
lot.
that for now.
That's a lot of good thoughts. I saw Emongg's eyes kind of twitch and light up at various points about whether solo tanking was preferred. And he was like, when I heard supports are fine, Emong's eyes were like, the trauma that he's experienced. But Emongg, did you get to play Mauga, and do you kind of agree with Freedo's sentiment that he's kind of very much an Overwatch 2 tank, like a lot more complex and something that wouldn't maybe have existed in Overwatch 1?
Yeah, and just to start, I don't mind solo tanking at all. Just to go to that one.
Sure.
The support discussion is a whole different discussion in a different podcast. That one.
We had that one.
I'm more along the line of that. It's just going to
Smart.
constantly, it's going to kind of shift around a lot because support was weak at the beginning of Overwatch and the tank was strong. It's just going to keep flipping. But Mauga, definitely. I mean, look at Junker Queen. Like, I think Junker Queen gets that same sentiment. You wouldn't really have had Junker Queen played too much. I mean, you could have argued like Junker Queen, Zarya comps and stuff, but I think that all the new heroes they've released are fun. The question is whether they're fun to play against. What they have, obviously, like I kind of like their new style of the balance of it, where it's like safe side of strong. I don't think Mauga's at that point right now. I think like it's before safe side of strong. So I think you'll probably actually see a buff. And I think one of the interesting parts about them doing that early release is this is like one of the first times they're ever going to have that type of data in comparison to like you have a few people play test it. You have your play test. You have some other people try them out. Maybe record a couple videos and
They don't use experimental anymore these days.
I know, and I think it's just because they just don't really have a way to find experimental. They're just constantly just like going through with different events, different things, and that's why they got rid of it. I think like they just didn't have any way
moving too fast now. I think is what.
Yeah,
they
they just couldn't keep up with it. Yep, exactly. I did like it though. That was always fun, and I think that all the new heroes are fun to play, which is exactly what they're aiming for. From a balance point of view, you can never balance a game like Overwatch. Like you'll never be able to fully balance a game like Overwatch, like ever. Because it's just impossible to do that because when you add a new hero and you constantly have to change numbers around, plus people just want to see new stuff, right? Like you could play the same meta for 3 months and people will tell you how much they hate that meta, and then you'll go to the new meta, they'll love it, they'll want the previous meta, then they'll want a new meta. Like it's that's gonna happen in these games. You can't balance games like this, and as you add more heroes, if they had original hero pool, it's a little bit different. But yeah, I agree. I think they really are. Their heroes are very much in a spot right now where they're very much designed for 5v5. But they said that from the get-go. Junker Queen. They mentioned very specifically, I think Junker Queen was the first hero they ever designed for 5v5. And now all the heroes you're seeing now are in that same boat. So they take that into consideration when they're making these heroes. And yeah, I mean, I think Mauga's going to be, I think we're going to see a very different Mauga in December. And I think that will be on the safe side of strong. I don't think we're going to be on Lifeweaver style stuff here. I think we're going to be seeing a very somewhat strong hero.
I agree. I think I was going to riff off something that you mentioned because it's giving me a thought that I want to bring up, although we're going to go back to discussing Mauga in general. But I think this hero release really gave us a little bit of a window into how fluid the process is of how they actually make and release stuff, because they mentioned that Mauga was supposed to have been released when Sigma was released, right? They said that like we actually swapped around the hero releases, and I think Ramatra was then also swapped around. I think maybe they then wanted Mauga instead of Ramatra, but then they dropped Ramatra anyways. Then Ramatra is supposed to have been sooner, and so you see this picture of like how they have to make decisions on the fly, right? It's not maybe necessarily the cold, calculated vision that we think it is. It's like a lot of improvising, a lot of adapting, and you can imagine that when there might be a villainous figure above you who's then doubly meddling in that release schedule to force you to fork into different directions even more, you can see how that might become difficult. And you can see how that affects the wider plan as well, because, with Ramatra, I really got the sense that the PvE missions were all kind of focused around him, right? There was like a lot of Ramatra in the missions, but he's already out. Whereas you can imagine that had he released at the time of the PvE missions, it might have created a better moment of like cohesion in the vision of what they're trying to present. So it's interesting that, we have finally now come to the space of Mauga. So I'm going to take it to Fareeha. Fareeha, did you enjoy the Mauga man? And what do you think he's going to kind of add to the game?
All right. So before we get to Mauga, what Freedo was saying earlier about executive meddling and the actions of forcing, just a lot of veiled silence and a lot of like gate-kept releases and all that kind of stuff. I think that it handled everything to do with players in a very contemptuous way. Like it seemed like they were almost like, fuck you players, fuck you fans, with the way that they withheld things. And it was also present in the way that they would treat their developers as well, in like I don't know how well known this is, but they would basically have Team 4 developers work on a project and then make them completely scrap it. And then that cycle would go on and on and on. And this was for PvE stuff. This is for stuff outside of that as well. And it's just like there was so much work. Like this happens in so many creative industries. People don't know about this, but like entire movies get made, like hundreds of millions of like budget. What am I saying? Yeah, movies with say like 200 million uh budgets out there, they would just get scrapped completely for tax reasons. And it's like, shit, that sucks so bad. So to have that out of the way must be massive. But to bring that back to Mauga, I think that even in the way that he was released, it kind of speaks to this generosity and kind of including the player back into the formula. And like, hey, you know what? The reason that we make these games is so that people can have fun and people can enjoy and like see themselves reflected in characters and just like have a grand old time with their friends. And the fact that they were just like, hey, like off the rip, you can play Mauga. You don't have to pay. You can just try them out for a couple of days, and we get that data, so you're helping us out. But you also get to join in on the hype, and get to have some of that FOMO of maybe not being at BlizzCon or whatever. So I think that was a really really good move of them. I think that they would be really smart to do that in the future with other hero releases because imagine that like hype bomb, not every single hero needs to have the Sombra-esque reveal of like, oh, we're gonna have little Easter eggs and puzzles for you to dissect and build up community hype and theories and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes you can just have that bombshell of like, hey, we've had these little hints that, we have the Samoa map and then now we have these like little vacation cards littered around Antarctica or whatever. Um, and then boom, manga. But yeah, I think they did a lot of things really, really well. As for the gameplay side of him, I didn't actually play any manga myself. I played a lot of DPS against him because I wanted to see how that would feel. Um, I play a lot of Sombra Farah, and so I'm like, it feels good. It feels good against him. But my impressions on the other end of that matchup now is that he's like a meatball. He's like a Roadhog Ryan hybrid in a way, and he needs so much healing.
You do be getting shredded fast. Flats,
Yeah.
There's been as you know, a discussion in the community about the state of tank. Although I have noticed that recently the queue times have gotten better. But I think a lot of people are hoping, crying out, praying, whatever term you want to use, that maybe the release of Mauga acts as like a changing point for the dominant state of, let's say, support, right? Let's be blunt. Do you think Mauga is going to change the equation in terms of like how fundamentally ranked feels, or is he going to be another tank who slots into the rock paper scissors?
I'm actually so in the opposite direction. Like I think that he actually feels more like a 6v6 tank than Ramatra
Really?
and Joker Queen. Yeah. I mean, he's literally Roadhog. He's Roadhog without a self heal and instead has a charge. Like even the small slam thing he does isn't really that good. Like okay.
His body
so-
is the hook.
Yeah, it's actually a reverse hook. It's legitimately worse. If anything. But yeah, I actually was testing it and playing it a little bit because I got home Sunday night from BlizzCon and I hopped on immediately. I was jet lagged, tired. John's like, "Oh my god, you don't know how to play the hero?" I'm like, "Yeah, no shit, I haven't played him yet." But I was actually figuring out that it was worse to hit people dead on with the charge because you would boop them straight up in the air instead of slam them. So I was like, I'm getting punished for being accurate on my pins. Like this is awful. So like he's just gonna be kind of like another Roadhog, and the problem with Roadhog is he's kind of just like either gonna be dominant or gonna be kind of shit, in a lot of ways. I mean, obviously with the rework coming, like, well, we don't know about that, but I'm saying like current Roadhog, you're gonna get discorded, you're gonna get slept, you're gonna get antied on cooldown, you're gonna need a carry if they have that, and they're gonna be having their Suzu saved for you. But if there's other things that they need to be using Suzu on, you're probably hampering your team from those things, whether it's BAP, Lamp, whatever. So when he comes back, he'll probably be buffed because I didn't think he was that good. I was actually losing it because my whole chat during World Cup was spamming, and Emongg was there. He saw my chat and his chat spamming how broken this hero is. And I got home and I was like, what the fuck are you guys talking about? Like, I was like, there's a reason why everyone doesn't understand tank balance. And like when we did the tank podcast, and like most of the tanks, like, yeah, we could probably nerf this, we could probably nerf this. Like, I feel like we're a little bit sensible with some of it sometimes, but like I feel like unless you play tons of tank, you just think tank's the most giga thing in the world because that one time you got in a 1v1 with a tank in a corner when you were half HP and he just like closed the distance on and killed you, and like that's the moment you remember, not the 17 times he exploded on the front line. So I think Mauga was super fun. I think he's complex. I like the idea of like the burning and how that combines with like something like Ashe, which is a little weird because he kind of feels like a more of a brawl tank to be combining with a character like Ashe, which is more of a poke character. So like those things are a little interesting, but I found him very fun to play. I thought he was very much like a 6v6 tank though. But if you think he's gonna like shake up the game, the only way I think that happens is if his stats are like really heavily padded. Especially in the like what other things are available. Like if I bumped into like a team that was like, nah, we're not playing Mauga, we're playing Zarya. Like I think my first game on, they played like Zarya, Ana, and I just was perma dead, like just instantly dead. And I was like, well, I can't burn anything. I can't proc my heal, whatever it might be. His ult is phenomenal though. That is probably one of the best / most fun ultimates they've ever added for any hero to the game. There's something about getting 5 people in your thing. You're like, ha ha ha, like full miniguns just going crazy. Feels so good. But yeah, I do think that he's probably gonna need a lot of help, and maybe this is even a little bit more controversial than if we're gonna go one step further. I think Roadhog is actually just straight up better. Like the self heal, self sustain, is just better. No. Because
you're gonna get so many. You don't realize, Slats. After the last podcast, when you were like, I think you should play Roadhog sometimes. Oh god, the number of Roadhog influxes in my games.
You talking about when
they started playing it more.
Flats had the sample size of like 12 games. Roadhog's dominant. Flats goes and plays 100 games of Roadhog right now. That's going to be a 30% winner.
I did it yesterday with CarQ.
100 games?
They had a Doom player that was destroying our team. I go, trust me, guys. I went Hog. 4 fights in a row. We smoked them, and then they swapped. What did they swapped Junker Queen? I was like,
sounds like you played ranked.
It worked. No one else on my team made any swaps. I was the only person who swapped, and we were getting smoked. And we came back and won that game. Just saying, the Roadhog pick. Pocket pick is nuts, especially if they don't have an Ana. But the whole point of it is the reason why I thought Hog was good is because of his sustain. Like just stand there, don't move, stun somebody. Mauga doesn't have a very good his E, like his mini fortify or whatever. Like the number's just too low. Like you can't really tank anything. And it didn't really feel like the lifesteal was doing a whole lot. So I don't know. That's a little bit further out there. But yeah, I think it's a little too optimistic to think that he'll shake up the game unless he just comes out giga busted. So we'll see.
I co-sign the Roadhog take. Can I add in for the
I was just gonna go to
add to the game?
Yeah.
I love the comments about the ult. This is the first time we brought it up. So I think the thing he adds to the game is being, I'm trying to think what the MOBA term for this is, but there's a lot of sustain that got added to Overwatch 2, right? And this is a character who can lifesteal, and you can sick him on a certain matchup, and there's potential. He has the stats, okay, to self-heal to ridiculous degrees. So I think what we have to, or what the devs perhaps might want us to, is see the game more in the way that Flats was just describing with Roadhog, which I completely agree, where we and especially SVB and I may want another vision for the game of the format we're going to play. But the format we have and they're designing for is counter pick-a-thon, okay? You're not intended to play your hero the whole time. Your heroes are not intended to be suitable for most situations. They just need some matchups. And especially as we get upwards of 40 heroes, that's going to be even more key as the game keeps going. Now, Hog has that key matchup against Doom, 100% agree, and perhaps other situations too. We spoke about in the previous show about how heal nading yourself is kind of ridiculous as like a brawler, as like a concept, especially amplifying OP healing. I think Mauga's got some of that too in terms of his like lockdown. Now, I'll be the guy who always brings up Lifeweaver, but I think for like the bottom 99%, Lifeweaver's like this crazy hero, which is like the unsung hero of the support role, because everyone complains about the ones that can headshot you, but Lifeweaver's execution to get 20k plus healing in a game is not so difficult. Like that's like a big part of the game for most players because everyone's kind of experiencing that. And you as a tank player, if you're trying to play like a Winston or something, and you're not getting a coordinated dives off, like nothing dies pretty much against that because he dodges, pulls back your target, out heals your damage, right? So now you got a guy like Mauga where he can go take basically any character in a duel, and both in the neutral and in especially in the ult fight is where he really does this. But if something's like out of position and he charges on it and life steals, especially if it's a big target, and there's not only so many of these that exist in the game, okay? It's a very narrow thing that I'm saying, sort of narrow, like, well, Hog is okay against countering a Doom player. Mauga can like jump in on a Bastion theoretically, okay, and out heal the damage, which was not something we've seen before. Like normally you would have to have your defensive cooldowns to deny the damage, but he can out heal it. And you know, I made a video that I put a lot of work into that did I I'm pretty happy with it. But there's a lot of cases of like supports not knowing what to do when I jump in on them and cage fight them and living through 2 support ults by life stealing myself, and then their support ults are done and my ult's still going, and then you win. That's like the new thing they're adding, like tremendous brawl sustain potential, like we've never seen before. Now, he also can be burst disabled very easily. We've talked a lot about that, but in the moments that you can add that, I do think it's somewhat transformative because the other characters are more bursty in nature, whereas even Queen or Hog, right? They sort of have like a hit and run play style, whereas Mauga is like a go in, find your matchup, stay in, and like just drain all the resources they possibly even could have and win. Now, if that doesn't happen, you get bursted by the burst value game that we often have, whether it's like nade or uh, any other disable ability. But that feels transformative to me. I also think like because that matchup knowledge is so important and the skill set of like just executing his plays are very very difficult in my opinion because it's so, as Flat said, like I was actually kind of shocked how complex they were allowing it to be. I don't know how I feel about it. It's like I'm kind of open-minded at the start, but it reminds me of when players had to learn Primal Rage properly. And I don't, what I mean by that is, you know, Fareeha came in with the OG reference to the Sombra ARG. I'm like, oh God, how old am I? There's a lot of players probably don't even know that one. There's a lot of players that probably don't remember a time where, you know, even top level players didn't stick their pulse bombs every time, or Primal Rage wasn't developed to the triple hit, everyone's doing it kind of meta that we have with our community. Like the level of, and we spoke about this earlier as well, like the ultimate rank type players that are going to break this character. Like when someone's actually mastered a character, the things that we think about them are entirely different. And Mauga requires that to almost like a Overwatch 1 Wrecking Ball degree, where Wrecking Ball came out and was like just kind of this odd man out as a tank. It's like, what do we even do with this guy? Like, why do we even have this as a character? And then eventually over time, people really start to master it. And then also, of course, they force it with stats. That's another way too to get people to play it. Like, here's some stats, you'll win easier, so learn the mechanics. But I think the mechanics have potential in the same way that I thought Lifeweaver's mechanics have potential. And as you adjust the stats, it'll be more applicable to the types of matchups that he has. And it, yeah, I don't know how I feel about it. Like I do. I'm totally fine with it. Actually, I'm totally fine with heroes being like this. I have a couple good matchups in this massive roster
Right.
of a game that when I can have them, you know, if you know what I just said about the character, you can go at those things. Because me as a tank player, I tend to struggle against certain things like that where I'm like, nothing can die. And characters I like to play is like Ramatra. I really find him a lot of fun, and he can attritionally work down value over time, then pop his ult. I see Mauga like kind of similar, but with just far less defense, right? So you have to be really decisive about your mechanical plays in order to make him work. And some of the numbers I do think feel kind of odd for a tank because we're we're used to it being a little bit more forgiving. Like I think it's a little too
Right.
sharp where if you get in on super close on that bastion and he's not supported in the right way, or even if he's in a lamp or something and you just life steal forever, like you're like, oh my gosh, I can actually outlive this. But in all other cases, you're kind of sharp against easily destroyed. So
Right.
I don't know. I'm pretty optimistic, and an ult that like another thing too, as far as the ult, we're used to like a lot of tank ults being easily outplayed now. Like we kind of just take it for granted, but Lifeweaver
Right.
again, a character I love, but it's like it used to be Grav was an impressive ult, and now it's like, well, I'll pull you out or lift you out. It's like, and that's a mid fight ability. And again, no one
He
complains
has
about
3
Lifeweaver. We're always playing about
cooldowns.
everything else.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
But you know, Sig Flux, you can't get more than one target anyway, and then it gets pulled out. It's like this ult is like a real tank ult. This is like in terms of power, it's like how tank ults were
Well,
in Overwatch 1 always.
You can still get life
If it's
ripped
not
out
countered.
and pedaled out. So those still exist, unfortunately.
One thing I noticed when I was playing Mauga. What was that sound? That's interesting.
Is that?
Is that on my end? Maybe
I have
from my
no idea.
phone.
What is-
I didn't even hear it. Maybe I'm losing my mind.
I think it's USVB.
Oh, what's happening?
That's interesting. Wait,
Went
yeah.
away. Of
Right,
course, I
okay.
say it and then it goes away.
Yeah.
Mic feedback maybe with the cable, perhaps. Is
Oh,
it
maybe.
anomaly?
Maybe the cable with the phone or something like that. Yeah.
Maybe,
The one thing
maybe.
Yeah,
I noticed
interference.
while playing Mauga was I'm not even like looking at the numbers. I'm thinking there's a you know how like Wrecking Ball can reload in like ball form.
Right.
I wonder if there's a way, and I don't know if they can do this, where like when you charge in, the amount of time you charge, you can start reloading a little bit more. Because the biggest issue I've ran into with Mauga is you have too much time and downtime in between your reloading, where like other heroes you kind of have like this constant flow of cooldowns and then being able to do something. That hero you want to go charge in and make a play, but then you have to reload in front of him and you're just sitting there. So I actually wonder if there's a way they can add a slight mechanic there where Mauga could like reload in a charge and like based on how far you charge, it will reload that much. Because you've seen that they've done it with a few heroes. May I think has that. I think what was it called? Wrecking Ball has that when you go in ball form. So things like that. I wonder if they could do that because I think that would add to the play style a little bit more too.
Yeah, that's a
Sorry,
really
so
nice.
I noticed that when I was playing.
No, that's a really nice quality of life buff, I think. Yeah, actually, any other thoughts on Mauga before we kind of move on? If anyone has anything else to add, chime in now.
The shield's legit on the ult. That's one thing I forgot.
Right.
It's like you're used to the ult, not like if it gets pulled out by Lifeweaver, you're used to it. Like, oh, the whole ult was worthless now. But the shield is like massive and has
It's one of
tons
the
of
only
stats.
things. So one of the only things EMP is good for these days.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
it interacts with so many things, especially when there's so many like hit scan supports that are really good. It's like just having the shield almost is like such a outrageous thing for the ult fight, especially if you block an ult or block line of sight. So it's got multiple things to it, and that's just sort of the character in general. Everything he does has multiple layers. So I think the skill ceiling is like way too high to really understand what he might be able to do. Because for years, like we'll talk about how like Roadhog's a bad character, but then we've got specialists out there that like through the hard times, through the good times, have like flourished, you know. So, and not that we should balance the game based on that, but just like we should be prepared for that to feel how heroes work as we keep getting overlap, because where else are they going to go with some of the designs of these, you know? Like I was sitting here thinking like how are they going to make a tank that impresses me? And I came out of it thoroughly impressed in terms of how fun the character is and kind of seeing the route we're going to expect for probably heroes in future, because even hearing the next ones, I can compare them to other heroes we already have, but it's like, well, it's like, oh, he's a Junkrat but goes underground, or here's a Batiste but maybe heals differently, and like this is how the game's going to feel from now on, where we kind of know what the archetypes are, and it's just going to be variations on the mechanics, and I'm like totally down for it.
Right.
I think there's a very big struggle in game development when you get to a stage that I think Overwatch is approaching, or it already has hit, where you have incorporated so many variants of mechanics that it's hard to find something really truly new. You know, like when it comes to heroes like Lifeweaver, he can do a lot of things that weren't really possible before, but he kind of operates on this thin line of usefulness depending on how his numbers are balanced. And I feel like Moa might fall in that same camp because, as Freedo was saying, when it comes to something like the Bastion matchup, where a lot of tanks literally have to play around his like transformed cooldown, um it's like, what if you had a tank that could actually go in while he was in that like high damage mode and benefit from it? And you think about like, oh, maybe well, you have Sigma, right? He can go in and like use his grasp and everything, but it's like, no, you get punished for doing that on Sigma because you have to keep a specific distance, otherwise you just it's awkward, right? It's awkward on him, and that's where he thrives. But like maybe with certain tunings of numbers, like Mawa could be that character that can get really really close and like see that recon form. Is it called recon? What is it called when Bastion's in that form?
I just call it gun mode. That's
I
what
always
call
call
it.
Gun mode.
Sentry.
Yeah.
Or turret.
Sentry.
Or recon is when he's standing up, and
Yeah.
then
Oh,
sentry
right,
or
right.
turret
Okay,
is
okay,
the
okay.
wheels.
Yeah, so when he's in turret mode, and actually see that as an opportunity to engage or something like that. But it's little things like that because when we talk about hero design and like new things they can introduce, it's like, what can they add? Like, oh, we have so many flying characters. What if we have one that bores underground? Or like, what if we can have characters that turn into cloud or just dust and seep through walls or something like that? You have to get really really creative. So I think they did a good job with him, all things considered, and he adds some new stuff, but it'll depend on the
Right.
numbers.
No, and I think it's a great point. I think also because there is that fine line between adding stuff that's new, but then adding a mechanic that breaks the game, right? It's like
Exactly,
the
because
Suzu for. Go ahead. You go ahead.
there's like so many things for you to consider like the game like interacting with, because when you add a new ability you have to think about, oh, how does this play with damage boost, how does this play with Zarya bubbles, like what is the breakpoint of this in regards to, like, say you give somebody there's a new gun in the game, right? It's like, oh, what are the breakpoints of this, like how many shots does it take to kill a turret? Does this just completely invalidate like those turret characters now? Does it make them too strong against it? Like, do we have another tracer on our hands? It's just, there's so much to think about.
Exactly, and I think you always risk upsetting your existing player base
Yeah.
if you add things that kind of shift the game away from perhaps the things that they initially came to love about the game. But we've kind of brought up the upcoming heroes, and I did want to mention as well that like another thing that's interesting about Mauga is I feel like they're starting to get a little more silly with the character like backgrounds and how they present the characters, right? Like Mauga's trailer was very silly. It was very, I think, catering to that next generation of players where obviously we saw the titty physics, we saw him being very like bombastic and just very out there, and I think that's very smart, and I think it's really fun. It allows the developers to kind of let loose a little bit rather than be very formal and really serious about like what kind of heroes they design. They're just being a little bit goofy, a little bit silly with it. And I'm sure, I mean, I can't speak for Zoomers, but I'm sure that's like something more Zoomers would enjoy, and it's something feels a bit more like League of Legends, a bit more mainstream. So I want to take it to Emongg then, because we saw as well with the announcement of Venture and Space Ranger, it's starting to feel like the developers have a nicer finger on the pulse of like the kinds of people as characters that the player base would enjoy. Like I've already seen people really hyped about Venture, for example. So I'm curious, Emongg, if you kind of had any thoughts on just the presentation. We obviously don't know too many details, but just the presentation of Venture and Space Ranger, are upcoming heroes.
I think it's good because it gets people really excited about the role that they play. Because we also, a lot of the time, I mean, what was the last DPS hero we had? Was it Sojourn?
Sojourn.
Yes.
Yeah. So like, I think it's really cool that they're showing like these new heroes like a little bit beforehand in that sense, because players, we some players flex queue, but some players only play DPS, some players only play support, so that gives them something to look forward to. So I like that they did that. It's something that we kind of, I think that they're going to start doing that more and more in the future, and I think that seems to be a Blizzard thing in general. I talked about it with like, WoW showing off 3 new expansions. They've never done that. It's always one expansion, they hide it, and so I'm excited about like just seeing new heroes, and we actually technically got a teaser for the tank. I'm sure we can go around all 500 maps right now and look through every single corner and probably find like what is that, like a turtle or something, like somewhere on some map we'll find like a hint, because we found out that some of these heroes actually had hints previously. I forget which hero it was, had the hint from like 2018 on like the Petra map. I don't know which hero it was, but a lot of these heroes are now starting, you can probably go find them on maps, so it's really cool to see them putting in those actually completely off topic now. how cool would it be? And people are gonna be like, "Well, don't give them this idea," but how cool would it be if you could actually have like those really cool like it can only be client side too, so you don't confuse people. You have like your own portrait you can put there, kind of like the goofy ones they've been putting for the
Oh
new
yeah.
heroes. I feel like it'd be fun to have that option. Like you could go and put that really fun like hero portrait in there rather than the hero portrait you have. I think that'd be something that would be really cool in Overwatch. Because I see those ones though, like the funny ones they put in for like Venture or for Space Ranger or the other tank hero that you can see there, obviously, but you have no idea. It looks like a turtle or like Bowser or something. So
Right.
People are gonna get this reference. But like, there's this game called Slay the Spire, and as you finish it, you unlock beta art, and it's just like the worst art ever. I mean this affectionately, but like, it's just memes and puns on whatever the card name is, and it's like we have that with Overwatch. Like, we know that it's there in
yes,
development.
yeah, and it would be fun to have that in the game. But granted, that's obviously something completely different. But I think that'd just be really cool to have. Yeah, I mean, I'm excited that they showed some of the new heroes. Obviously, you didn't really get to see too much of Space Ranger, but I think like showing off Venture's skills and like what they can do, etc. I think is like that's a step in the right direction for everything they're doing. I've talked about it before. Like they'll wait till last second sometimes, and I love that about BlizzCon. And now that like if you play DPS, you know that in April, you'll be playing a new hero, and on top of that, you also know in February you can play the new rank system, which is
Right.
all something like a huge discussion. So I like that you kind of have an idea now of when things are going to be in comparison to like here's the new tank hero, and we'll announce the DPS. Like I said in a blog post later on, which I love the blog post by the way. Keep in mind, I'm talking about the blog posts. I absolutely love them. Keep doing those. But I like that they're doing that more and more now.
Right. It's like it gives people the expectations of what's to come, so they're not overly hyped or overly disappointed by things that aren't, when they don't match that expectation. And as a DPS player, you don't have to. Go ahead.
Well, I'm saying, imagine if you play DPS and you still are like, when's the next DPS hero? Like,
Right.
if they just went and announced Mauga and like, yeah, you might get a hint from like, listen, we know Jared will probably hint at like it's DPS, but like that's not going to get to everybody, right? Like that's the thing. Sometimes like when they tweet something, that's not going to get to every single person. Nor is the blog post. So when they do things at BlizzCon, they announce like, hey, we have a DPS, a support, and a tank next year. Every role knows they have something now. And we haven't even seen the gameplay of the support that much, and we haven't seen anything on the tank, but we know those exist now. As a tank player, I was excited for December. Since like whenever the last tank was, because I knew that we're getting a tank in December, right? So same with support players. Like, remember when they released Overwatch 2, people were like, there's like 4 support heroes. What's going on here? And they're like, no, we're releasing a bunch. Like, oh, okay, cool. Sounds good. Sounds great. Like, I like that they're doing that now, and it's a step in the right direction. I love that roadmap type they're doing. It's even more of an advanced roadmap than we had at the beginning of Overwatch 2. Anyway, that's my...
No, that's a very good point. And because that roadmap was more general, right? It's like we're going to release a hero like once every 2 seasons, right? So it's like that is fine, but having that clear pathway is I think helpful for the players to really know what to expect. But also I think another good point this raises is that what I really liked for Overwatch at BlizzCon is that it allowed the wider gaming world to see what Overwatch has been doing and will be doing. So I think that a lot of Overwatch's problems is not necessarily that the game is significantly worse than, say, a Valorant or an Apex to grind and play. It's that the reputation has taken so many hits over the years that a lot of people who I think otherwise might enjoy the game don't even want to give it a shot, or have perhaps already mentally like they're like, I'm not going to play Overwatch. Like, I'm done with that game. So like people are not necessarily engaging with it fairly. And I think what this BlizzCon might have given them is a chance to be like, oh, they did a One Punch Man collaboration. They did a K-pop thing. That's cool. I like K-pop. Oh, they're releasing this Mauga guy. Like, I like the look of him. Oh, an Adventure, Space Race. So they get to see a lot of what's coming for people who ordinarily might not tune in. So I think I'm glad that, firstly, we went first as well. That was really good. So I think it's really nice for Overwatch that the wider, at least the Blizzard community, and I'm sure other people who are just vaguely interested in Blizzard would have seen that and gotten in touch with the plans that Overwatch has. And I'm hopeful that a lot of people saw that as something they at least want to try again. Now, Flats, let's go to you again about Venture and Space Ranger. Any thoughts on the heroes and maybe just any feelings you have, either their aesthetic or perhaps how they'll fit into the game?
I don't have a ton of on that. I kind of want to build off of what you just said. a little bit because I
Sure.
kind of agree with you on the whole. Is it worse or is it better? You know, Valorant, Apex, etc. Because I'm with you on that. I think that the new heroes are obviously stuff that gets people's attention. You know, it's like, oh, that looks cool, or you know, that looks good. You know, but like, man, this is gonna maybe sound bad, but like, I feel like we've been fighting with each other for like 5 years. Like other games, like yeah, like they have like you know they have their problems with like game balance or development or more content. Like you know, I've been starting to see the Valorant streamers like, oh my god, our game's dying. We don't have enough content. Oh, shut the fuck up over there, dude. Like, shut up. But like, we've been fighting for a long time. You know, like our esport, like Overwatch League, which you know now got sent off to the farm. Notoriously for a long time, like didn't want to work with creators. There was just such a big gap between like casual players, competitive players, streamer, like you know what I mean. Like we've all been kind of like in our own little worlds for a long time. And one of my biggest hopes going into Overwatch 2 is to like start to close those. And it felt like the community slash streamers slash creators slash like you know like people that are like more hardcore and the actual game development team have gotten a little closer because like the only way games thrive is if everybody's in it together, right? Like your esport works together with your devs work together with your community works together with your creators. You know what I mean? Like everything has to kind of like be in sync and like everybody's like it's like a you scratch my back, I scratch yours kind of deal. And like everybody wins at the end of the day. But we've been fighting for so long. Like between like the Bobby bullshit of you know the Overwatch League promises, right? Like all the billionaire owners being pissed that they're not getting what they want, players getting screwed, you know, coaches getting screwed, you know, balance not being like the best or like random patches dropping like you know like as playoffs hit and it's like oh well I guess you're playing on a new patch now. So then like players feel like they're not getting listened to. They feel like balance is not for them. So creators feel like they're not getting, you know, whatever. Like that whole cycle has been a mean tornado for a very, very long goddamn time. And it feels like it's starting to kind of settle a little bit, but there's still a lot more work to be done. I would be optimistic on like another year. Like I think like genuinely, like this BlizzCon was really, really good of showing that, but I don't think it was enough for the average gamer. I don't think they looked at Overwatch and were like, "Oh my god, like wow, Overwatch is so back." Like, yeah, we can fucking meme it because like we're here all the time and we actually know like why these changes are good, but they're not as impactful as say WoW. Like WoW got blown away. What right? Like they got everything they were asking for. They got to see so much content. That's why like WoW creators are like way more cynical than like Overwatch ones. Like I hope people genuinely know that. They like I feel like we're in our little own bubbles. Like people get mad at like the Overwatch circles sometimes. Like no. You don't understand. We're actually like out of all the gaming communities, I think we're probably one of the most delulu for our game. You know what I mean? Like we're like, oh, like this is really good. And like other games are like, that's such a small change, but we love the small changes because we've been getting nothing for so long. I think we probably need about another year of actual good changes, of actual like pushing the game forward. By the time next BlizzCon comes around, now there's so much to show of actual progress, a new rank system, a good rank system, new heroes, whether they decide to pick up the pace on those heroes. Because, quite frankly, let's be honest, we are on the same schedule of what Overwatch's original release was, right? Like the same hero cadence has not picked up speed. This is what Overwatch was from 2016 to 2018, 2019. There is no difference. Aaron talked about that how much the team has expanded and they brought more people on. You know, of course, they're still working on like small bits of PVE, but like the PVE has been kind of been put to the side, and I think we all know that. Like they acknowledge of like yeah, you know, like we're focusing on PvP again. And I maybe I'm misremembering, but I feel like Aaron may have mentioned that they're still expanding. They're still trying to grow the size of the team. And if you look at where we are today versus where we were at 22, or October 22 to October 21 to October 2020, right? With during like, you know, COVID and whatnot, we have come a long way and there's tons more content, but we're not there yet. We're getting there. We're on the right track. And hopefully this year really does keep going that way because I think things like the game coming out on Steam has the ability to, me and Emongg have talked about this like ton, and he probably knows it better than I am. Like, guy knows all. But like when Apex was in the dump and like just fell off a cliff. Nobody gave a shit about Apex. You can go back and check all the numbers. That game literally hit rock bottom. And then they decided to invest in their community. They started listening to their creators. They started listening to their players. They started listening to their community. They tried to start building things better. Plus, it came out on Steam. You can see the Steam charts, like it starts to climb back over time after it got people's attention. It got people's trust back. It is doable. It is salvageable, but it will be much harder than Apex's was because we've had like way more setbacks. But I think they're on the right track. I think it's doable. And I think you made a really, really good point that BlizzCon probably got people's attention. Like, oh, like, wow, they actually did get some good stuff. Like, maybe I'll pick it up again, or maybe I'll give it a shot. But if you're talking about like actually like full go, like removing the negative stigma around Overwatch, I think there's still a lot more work to be done. But we definitely have made some positive progress, and I think that needs to be commended.
I think season 9 is going to be a big part of that, because season 9 is where a lot of people when they played Overwatch initially, they were like excited, and then they went into ranked, and then ranked just was not given good feedback. And now they're changing that, so that's a good step in the right direction. And what way I've seen it with free to play games is free to play games can bounce back. I mean, even, and don't get me wrong, Fortnite's huge, but you see Fortnite right now. Fortnite is killing it right now with everything, because they just sometimes you have a year or two of these games where like it doesn't go as well, but like with these free to play games, people are constantly trying to go and like play something else and try something. So I think season 9 is super important. Don't get me wrong, season 8 is super important, because obviously it's new tank, all that. I'm gonna be taking a ton. If there's drops, we'll be streaming. Obviously, anyway, but like
Drops?
in general, like I had to say drops because I know that gets Flat's attention. Yeah. But season 9, in general, I think is going to be a huge part of that, because obviously when you have a brand new rank system coming into play, and we'll probably talk about rank because we've been on this discussion for a while, but like I think they now finally have a good blueprint for rank. So even if it's not the most perfect system, they can at least build off of that in comparison to the current system, where the only thing they could really build off of was like, okay, now you need to win 4 wins for your placements and lose 12. And that's hard to like give you that feedback. Also, I have to go to the bathroom, so I'm gonna be right back. I drank some coffee.
You go ahead. I'll save the rank
Go.
discussion for when you're back. I wanted to take it to actually Freedo, because I want to talk, before we get into the rank discussion, I want to talk about the bigger picture, because we've just spoken about Overwatch's reputation. And I think one thing that will really help is now the Microsoft thing, right? I think it's hard to shake the reputation while Bobby Kotick is still in charge of things. People will never really buy that, oh, this is a fundamentally different development team and they're trying to do things differently. Like, no, it's still Activision, Bobby Kotick. But with him gone, and I think it was really interesting that they actually brought Phil Spencer out, and he was, saying the right things. He was kind of like, oh, look, we really want to let Blizzard do their own thing. We don't want to like stop them. What Blizzard is good at is making industry-defining games and genre-defining games. And so that's what we want to do. We want to empower them to keep doing that. And I think a lot of wider fans of Blizzard, of course, Freedo and I are big fans of StarCraft. We kind of got our ears perked up, like StarCraft 3 maybe, or like something else like that might come. But I think there was talk of like they're going to do something else in the StarCraft universe. But all these kind of things will help shake that reputation. And I know something that you really enjoyed, Freedo, was the PvE nonchalance almost that they kind of showed when they were talking, where they were like, yeah, when it comes to PvE, we're not really got too much. They could have showed a lot if that was going to be the focus, as we thought Overwatch 2 was, but they were quite reserved on it. So I'm curious of your thoughts of kind of the communication side of things of BlizzCon, and if you are happy with this new direction.
Yes, because it's always better to back up the things that you say are coming. So it's like if they've got a long list of things that they're showing, they're saying they're working on and what their dedication is, and if they land on that, they'll be able to build trust by the next year. Whereas they kind of already said this about the quote PvE content that they've made before, that they're looking to gain feedback. Like they said this in interviews, to perhaps change either the business model. I feel that conversation is really tied in with the monetization of the game as well, because if they're reconsidering certain systems, pulling any levers on that is going to change the outcome of their financials, which they do have to worry about. Like they do have to make sure that it is a sustaining game, because they want to keep producing content for it, as opposed to being a little loose with their expectations of being able to pay people to actually do the work that we want to see. So Um, I'm curious if they're in a reevaluation stage, like if they're like really determining on the feedback. So kind of think of the timeline of the year, right? Like that came out in season 6 a few months ago. It takes kind of a long time for them to go any different route with it. Let's say whatever of the multitude of routes they could go from that point, it's going to take like a year for them to really do it. And by this point of the year as well, there is no work being done because Blizzard goes away for the holidays in a few weeks. So while there may be things they could say that they want, like they could have been transparent with this too. They could say, we want to do X, Y, and Z, you know, to service the expectations. But instead, they decided to say, we're reevaluating. And I think we should prepare for impact of it potentially just being completely gone or taking a new form entirely, like different scope and scale of what to expect. That's kind of the route I would say, because if you kind of see the trajectory of how they've done this so far, it's like the launch of Overwatch 2 had a lot of things in compromised almost beta states, let's say. We got like a beta ranked mode and like a lot of things didn't work right, basically. And I'm of the opinion that the story mode felt like that, where it wasn't really polished the way I would have liked a Blizzard game to be. I think it was about as fairly priced as they could have made it, I guess, maybe. Would they have preferred it to, I guess, like I'll put it something tangible to the vagueness I'm saying. I only can say vagueness because they didn't say anything. But like to put something tangible to what I'm trying to explain, do they instead make it like Overwatch 1? Do they instead make it smaller, free, seasonal, come in, try a thing, and then just monetize through skins? Do they think that is a better solution? And I bet you that they're figuring that out. I'll give you a example here to really understand what I mean. SVB mentioned StarCraft 2. I saw this clip going around. A dev on StarCraft 2 was mentioning that a WoW skin, I think it's the first like pink mount, let's say, earned more money than the entirety of Wings of Liberty. Okay, so one mount. To put that in perspective, okay? And I Overwatch, I don't know if we've got the exact numbers of the difference between, like, WoW is a different kind of community because you already pay into it and you probably play it even more. But that's like what we're dealing with in reality. So it's almost awkward to put a price tag on something that isn't like a super huge full game, in my opinion. Like, I think it feels weird because players are like expecting some amount of value and time and investment into that thing if it has any price tag, or it can be a goofy cosmetic that's overpriced. Like, those are the options that we've been conditioned to accept somewhat. And not that we all accept it, but the general gaming public has accepted that. So under
Right.
that paradigm of what because like if the story mode was free, would it have a different reception? I don't know. Like, and would have that have been smarter for them to do in the end? So I don't know. I never needed PvE necessarily. I was hyped for it to exist if they were going to do it justice. I love Diablo. And I know Blizzard does these things well, but this is a new Blizzard. So I'm kind of thankful just overall. It's like we've got our new devs, new Blizzard, new direction. Overwatch 2 is a PvP game. Don't over promise and under deliver. I think that's like was the exact right play. I just hope it doesn't get in the way. Like that's that one little thing that is now gone now. Like we could say in some ways Owl maybe was a distraction to the management of how Overwatch grew too big too fast. Scope creep, the PvE as well was another like pipe dream of a thing. So we had like multiple competing pipe dreams for this simple PvP game that like
Right.
could have like thrived in this one zone. They went off and did these other things with a lot of their attention, and now all that's reeling back. So it's lurking in the corner to potentially be a problem. I feel if like I don't want to. What I'm trying to say is I don't want to find out in a year. It's like, yeah, well, we had to delay the ranked overhaul because we decided to make another story. But I don't think that's going to happen. But I don't want that to happen. We've
Right.
been burned before in this kind of way where, and I'm all smiles today, but let's not forget that in the transition period from Overwatch 1 to 2, they were incredibly disingenuous. Like basically deliberately so, to vaguely not to mention
Well,
the PvE downscale to the degree that it was, and kind of coyly be like, "Yeah, it's coming, guys. Yeah, buy the watch
let's
We know
let's
why,
go.
though.
We're on the right
We know
track."
who. He's gone. The person who
Right.
did all of these things, we know. Like devs have spoken out, like former devs have spoken out about it. Like we all know who the boogeyman in the closet is, and the boogeyman got taken out to the trash. So, so it's
Right.
like I think it's okay to be optimistic, but you're right. You should be cautiously optimistic, of course. But the reason why I'm a little bit more like I'll give you the benefit of the doubt is because like we know who. Like we all, it's an open secret, right? And that guy's gone. So it should be fine, right?
Right?
Right. And I think actually to finish this point, to bring up the Mount making more money than the entire first release of StarCraft 2, I actually think the K-pop collaboration is a much better way of for everything for Overwatch, like storytelling as well. I actually think that like I was
I
more
had so many thoughts on
interested.
this. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Same.
I'm curious if to Fareeha and Class's thoughts as well. But like I feel like the storytelling was more effective having it in a K-pop video of like relatability rather than trying to tell this grand overarching story of like the Overwatch heroes fighting through this mission there and the town is being destroyed. I think it was much better to just have like, oh, look at them, they're cute and they go to K-pop concerts too and they're friends and they hang out and they get dressed up and me and my girlies, we're gonna party till it's early, like it's like much more effective, I think, both as getting you closer to the characters but also money. To channel my Mr. Krabs, right? Like I think it's just like I don't know the numbers, but I imagine the K-pop skins have probably sold more than the expansion, right? The PV expansion probably got them less money than the K-pop skins, which is like obviously we can't have international K-pop collaborations all the time, but I think stuff like that, and I think that like maybe I'm sure they've heard it a million times, but stuff like cinematics, stuff like this video are the bread and butter, I think, of what got people into Overwatch and like the lifeblood that first drew so many audiences to the vibrant, amazing characters of Overwatch. So I actually think if I was to ask my wish list, I would say PvE missions, whatever, more stuff like this, please, more collabs, more, and they have said they're going to do some, which I'm excited about, more storytelling via snapshots rather than necessarily trying to progress this overall picture of what's happening in the world of Overwatch, because I don't know if that's as effective as this is. Fareeha, you go ahead and give me your thoughts as well.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So Emongg mentioned Fortnite, and that kind of lit a light bulb in my brain because Emongg was saying how Fortnite has gone through phases. It's fallen out of public consciousness, but overall it's still very, very strong in its cultural impact. Because Fortnite is a phenomenon, and we meme on it all the time because it's like the kiddie game, it's the kid that people little 12-year-olds beg for like V-Bucks on. No, it's more than that, to play Fortnite and to have all these skins and all these kinds of things. It's a part of being a 12-year-old. It's part of like social construct now, because in order to relate with kids, back when I was growing up, it was to have like those like silly bands, or to have like all the gel pens, or all these little trading games and such. But nowadays it's to have the coolest latest Fortnite skin, it's part of being a social kid. And so when you think about the cultural impact of Fortnite, it's grand, it's massive, it's baked into society. And you have to think about what the cultural impact of Overwatch is. Like, what is it that brought it into the public consciousness and kept it there so strongly for its first opening years, and what made it fall away? And it is kind of this neglect of what they said was lightning in a bottle, and it's the characters, right? It's this core of story that's present in Overwatch, because there's so many people, more than any other first-person hero shooter out there, more than any of the hero shooters out there, Valorant, Apex, Rainbow Six Siege, Quick Champions, like I could name so many, but more than any of them, Overwatch has a fan base that cares so deeply about its characters and the fandom side of things. And so I think this K-pop collab is such a right move in getting some of that back. you know, and you can see it on social media. Like the love for this game and that side of the fan base is coming back. And that is so exciting because this is a part of the player base that has surely felt neglected over these past couple of years, right? And you look at the Overwatch Declassified that just came out. It's basically like a big lore book that got no advertising, unfortunately. But people are so excited about that, and people are so excited about this K-pop collab. It's just like we want more of this. And as the others were saying, the fact that this is getting more investment now instead of competing with PvE, because I don't want to sound like a doomer. I think that, you know, people felt rightfully burned when all of that was scrapped because expectations were set and then they were hit with a wrecking ball, you know. So people can be upset about that, but I think that, man, the PvE missions, you would have played them once and then you would have never touched them again. That's kind of what it comes down to for me at least. And like, I feel like this stuff has much more of a lasting impact because I think it sticks with you more to have a character that you can reflect and like see yourself in, and you know, have these stories that really move you. You know, I still think about the Bastion cinematic, the Reinhardt cinematic to this day, and I don't remember what happened in some of like the Havana PvE mission. Like that didn't really matter as much to me. So I don't know. I hope we get more of this stuff.
I agree.
I do want to
Flats,
say
you had
something.
one. Oh, go ahead. No, Emongg, you go ahead first.
One, I want to point out my nephew did say his favorite Christmas present was the V-Bucks I got him for Fortnite. I want to point that out. Okay,
You are the
that is a
favorite
true
uncle.
story.
No fucking way.
That
You are
is
the
a
favorite
true
uncle.
story. I got him V-Bucks for Christmas one year, and he was excited, and he was actually telling his friends that he got all these cool Fortnite skins. One thing that I think we also see with like some of the skins too, and this is just a little bit of a side note. I think that now that they've kind of like loosened up on what they want to put out for skins, like they're kind of past the, well, we don't want to make it too like memey. Like we're past that now. They're memeing really hard. Like, and for example, I don't play a lot of Mercy, right? But I'm also a huge zombie fan. So when you bring in, sorry, I know I'm bringing up Zombie Mercy a little bit too early. It's not out yet. It's not out
Oh
yet. But
God.
I get excited about that because I love zombies. Like it's one of my favorite genres. Like I've grown up watching zombie stuff. But my point is that you can have a zombie Mercy skin, and that's cool to me. And I don't even play Mercy that much, but I love the idea of a zombie Mercy skin. So it's cool that they're bringing all these different variations of things into the game when before they were kind of like they didn't want to do that as much because they wanted to make it have it be more serious. Now it's a lot more of a it's become a lot more meme heavy, which is I think good in this for Overwatch, and that's what they're doing. It's just way more meme heavy. You know, that's kind of where we're at with it, and that's good. I like that.
Meme
I
heavy
don't think it's
doesn't
going too
mean
far.
insignificant, right? Because we think of like how significant SpongeBob is, for instance. SpongeBob is like
Love that.
the king of internet memes, but it's significant for so many of us still. Yeah.
Peter, you
Exactly.
got something to
It's
add,
great.
and then I want to take it to Flats.
Yeah, I would say I don't want it to feel too goofy, but I think it's all suited so far. It is stretching perhaps beyond what they would have done at launch. Whereas at launch I think they were, and I mean Overwatch 1 launch, boomer take, but much more like invested in they're more precious about it for sure, 100%. But none of it has stood out to me because like the TF2 community, for example, is kind of always remembers, not that I played this game, but I've heard them talk about it, like when the silly hats got like out of control and kind of didn't want that necessarily to change the vibe of the game. I don't think the skins have changed the vibe of the game necessarily, but also we already have a hero shooter with all the wacky abilities. And so whether, you know, Mercy's a zombie or a witch or whatever, it makes like no difference to me so far. But if there's a skin that's like obnoxiously over the top, then you know I don't prefer those, but they don't even necessarily stand out in the chaos of the game so far. Like I think one thing they did want for competitive integrity reasons anyway, um, for all PvP players, not just like you know the most try hard, but um, is just the discernibility of the characters, and that's something that like MOBA games struggle with if you're not like an expert on the 100 characters in MOBAs that have hundreds of skins each. Like it's really hard. For me so far, it's like it's still been fairly easy. There's a few hitboxes that are like too similar, where the characters starting to look kind of similar. Like let's say Kariko Witch. I don't know necessarily at a glance if it's Mercy Witch or not. Like it's kind of the same overall, but anyway, sorry, just like a nerdy take on the
No.
the joy there and optimism. But like yeah, I would like what I'm trying to say, I guess, for the audience is like I'm not trying to let them get out of hand with this without, offering feedback if I think it would be too much. Because I feel like I'm someone who's sensitive to this. Like, Junkrat's got like a skin where he's all pink and colorful, and I'm like, that's I like other ones, right? I like the mobster one. That's like my favorite one. But
I'll tell you one where this is the only one I can think of that step beyond the line. Is the fucking oil baron Ramatra looks nothing like Ramatra, and it is like the silliest thing I've ever seen. I was just like, when I saw in the trailer, I think they put it in the trailer, and I was like, who's this guy? Like this is not Ramatra, but you're right in that it is something to bear in mind. I think that I was gonna tweet that this might be the first pay to win skin, because it'll take the enemy tank so long to realize who he's got to counter swap that it might lose a couple fights before he realizes this Ramatra. But in general, they have done a good job of keeping it in check, I think. And you're right that some MOBA games have they have some significantly transformational, like there's like Pudge and Invoker in Dota who have like kid skins, so there's like their hitbox completely like shrinks down into a kid, and there's like they have completely different voice lines. So I don't think Overwatch will do that. Obviously, it's a hitbox shooter, so you're not going to want to do that. But yeah, Flats, you had something you wanted to add on this whole K-pop PV discussion.
God, I'm trying to remember. So long ago. Oh, I remember. This is a little small snippet, but I feel like it's important because no one's gonna really say anything. But like, remember earlier, Freedo was talking about how like for the longest time everything was about bottom line. I mean, obviously it's still a for-profit company, right? But like shock value, put everything in one set, right? But there's something very important I think that happened that not many people have talked about. When the K-pop collab went live, there was a deal in the shop where if you bought the $50 bundle or the $100 coin bundles, you got an extra percentage of coins. So the bundle was $68, I think. I see what you're doing there. You couldn't have made it 69. Okay. But they made it so that you got $70 worth of coins, which is enough to buy it, because they could have very easily either made you buy the $50 bundle and a $20 bundle of coins, so you have enough, or make you buy the $100 bundle of coins, so then you spend an extra $30. Because remember, coins are literally fake money. It's Blizzard money. It's not real. The only thing that matters is the fact that they took the money out of your account and they gave you fake money, right? Like that is the conversion. As long as money is leaving your credit card or your debit card or whatever it is, that is how they made their money, right? Like they don't care about giving the extra 3,000 coins. That doesn't matter to them. They already got their money. But the important thing is when you wanted to buy, if you had no coins and you wanted to just buy this set, you buy the $50 version and you got enough coins to buy the 68 coin bundle, right? So that way, instead of charging you potentially $70, you actually only got charged $50. And I think we all talked about beforehand many times, I thought this was going to be the first $100 bundle for sure. Like there was no doubt in my mind this was going to be the first $100 bundle. They made it $68 / coins, 6,800 coins, which I thought was more than reasonable. And then they went the extra mile in that if you didn't have the coins, you could buy the coins for $50 and get enough to buy the 6,800 coin bundle. So realistically, if you had nothing, it was $50, right? If you had coins already in, well, kind of tough shit, obviously, like at that point, right? But they could have very easily just not done that, because like this is also something that's very different, because I can tell you for sure that they got paid a percentage plus probably a fee on top of that for, the collab. Like, let's say they got like $1 million or whatever it was, and then they get a percentage based on the revenue share of how much people bought the bundles. They could have went way higher. They could have just farmed. They didn't. And I think there's something to be said about that, because people were very, very, very critical, for example, about the Diablo bundle at the start of season 7. And they acknowledge that, and they're like, okay, we'll try to figure out a better way to do this in the future. And then you look at something like a K-pop collab, it's like this was like an opportunity. Like this was genuinely like, if they were seething at like foaming at the mouth to farm you for cash, they could have done it and you would have still bought it, right? And they didn't take it. I think that's very interesting. Obviously, it was still an expensive bundle. I'm not saying it's not, but I think there needs to be a little bit of an acknowledgement of like, you look at something like Valorant. How much would that cost in Valorant? Think about that. Ask yourself that question. So, you know, I think that obviously it could be a bit better, but maybe it's time we pump the brakes a little bit on the constant prices thing, because like it's gotten better.
I did a favor for some staff at Riot Games, and they gave me like $200 in Valorant currency. I was able to buy one knife. One knife. It was
Sweet.
gone. Oh
That's
man.
so funny.
Me with my one knife that I earned after
Yeah.
years of labor. Now, all I'm gonna add to that is that I'm gonna have to correct Flats when he says that Overwatch money is not real money. Try telling Emongg's nephew that the V-Bucks he got are not real money. He is fucking chuffed. Emongg is forever his favorite uncle.
Yeah, but
so
Emongg's account still took the same hit.
Wait, have you seen his Fortnite skins?
No, I don't have a
pretty
map.
sweet.
I don't play
I actually
Fortnite.
haven't seen them either, to be honest with you. But they're
Okay, fair enough.
probably pretty sweet.
Probably
way-
they
the-
make good skins. Unfortunately, we can't. It's like Overwatch, like Fortnite's based off like a default character. You know, you can't
right.
just like stick Goku in the game and just be him. Like even if you did like cosplay, like there's gonna be differences. You know what I mean? You can't just have like the 2D like like a cartoony drawn out version, because it won't make sense. You know, so they're kind of set up for life over there with that.
Right. Okay. Well, that's a lot
One
of
last
good
monetization
yeah,
point
Go ahead.
before we go on. I'm curious. Just wanted to. I like putting these flagpoles on the ground because we do this show a lot. But like, I'm curious on this point how we'll feel, again in a year, because they'll be changing the battle pass a bit and monetization in general. We already have evidence of them changing prices on things. Like I believe the Kariko Witch skin bundle was $40, and then the Diablo bundle, which had
28.
multiple skins in it, was it 28? I thought it was I thought it was like outrageously 40. Maybe I'm wrong on this point. I'd have to look it up, but I feel like they've
Right.
adjusted the prices over time. But in any case, they are saying they're doing that. Let's just say, and the theme of the point is correct, even if the example isn't. Um, as they do that, and as time passes, I'm curious on the reception of the community on this point. It's like I think they had a much bigger complaint when the game content felt somewhat underwhelming. It's like I really liked it at launch, but it wasn't like obviously Overwatch 2 at launch, right? Like it was like we kind of had to like debate it a little bit. Like it wasn't like clear to everyone this is a full sequel, but I think by the time that we get all the, multiple modes, multiple heroes, all the reworks have come through, it's like we'll have Overwatch 2 maybe in 6 to 12 months, I think. And then by that point, will our community not be so up in arms about monetization when they've done enough of the right things for long enough? It's like it's a lot easier to not be upset at overpriced skins when you've got a rank mode you actually like. And that's, I think Valorant has its issues, but people get addicted to that system, and we want to get addicted to this one too. We've been begging you to let us be addicted, and you tried to obfuscate the reward mechanism that we were addicted to. And so now, anyway, that's just like one example, but
Right.
I think sentiment can change on this over time. And I think as we get like distance and a new community as well, it's like the baggage and expectations of Overwatch 1 and how they manage that. Like, I don't know. I'm starting to feel like insensate in the community. I'm like curious if anyone has strong opinions about this, but like the percentage of old heads that like demand loot boxes just seems to be like diminishing day by day a bit.
I think they're
so,
leaving.
too.
Probably leaving, or they're just like kind of done.
Or getting over it, right? Yes.
Or
Agreed.
accepting the world for as it is, like accepting this new era, and they're like, "Fuck it, there's no use railing against it anymore."
Because at the end of the day, it's like if I tell you Mauga is really fun, and like you wanted loot boxes, like, oh, I'm going, the gamers do this, right? Like they have relationships with their games. Like, I'm breaking up with you, but it's like, oh, but that new character looking kind of fun. I don't know. He runs in and traps everybody. It's like, oh, like I want to be Mauga. It's like we'll eventually lure some of these people back. I feel with the content actually being good for long enough. That's kind of my thesis on that.
Right. They break up, but then 2 a.m. they see the risque selfie, and then they're like, shit, I gotta hit up the DMs again. Like, you're looking good in that selfie, and then they come back real discreet, like. So they just can't They can't end it. They can't get that clean break. But I think it's a good point, and I think that it'll be interesting to see where we stand in a year. Should the competitive changes especially make a tangible difference, which is what I want to get to now, because I know Emongg, I'm going to take it to you. You've been eager to kind of discuss this a lot. You've already kind of mentioned it a few times, but the competitive changes. So basically, anyone who missed it, no longer coming season 9 will we have the stupid 5 card. I mean, it was a good idea. I don't want to knock them. I shouldn't use terms of that. I don't want to knock them for trying it, because it was worth trying something different. They wanted to try and alleviate rank anxiety. I get it. I think it's a valid point to try and address, but unfortunately, it just didn't do what it needed to do for everyone else. So that's going to be gone. Instead, we're going to see this little bar. And what I really liked personally was that the bar will indicate as it moves up and down why your rank went up and down as much as it did. So there was like a little green bar that they showed that said, oh, you're being extra adjusted for, like a win streak, or for having like I think it was called like calibration,
like performance and stuff too.
Right. So there's going to be a lot more info, and you can click a little info button, and apparently we didn't see that part, but you can click it and it'll tell you exactly the breakdown. You're still going to have your skill tier divisions, but that clarity should hopefully be a little bit helpful to understand where you're going up and down. So Emongg, tell me how you felt about this new system, and if you're as excited as I think you are.
Sorry, we were enjoying the sound of that sound again towards the end there.
Yeah,
That
it
was
is
great.
You're giving us
USB, by the way.
ASMR, bro.
Oh god,
Yeah.
God, I'm so sorry. I think it's when I move. I don't know what's happened. Somehow.
It's
when
okay.
I
It might just be the
It's
cord.
not
of
that bad.
Okay.
So I think the thing I'm excited with ranked is, well, first of all, just to start off with ranked will always go through iterations in pretty much every game. I mean, we've seen it in Apex, right? I'm sure we'll see it in Valorant at some point where you constantly go through these iterations. But I've talked about it, they have that blueprint. They have a base that you can go off of, and then you can build off of that or change it fairly easily. I say easily, but you know what I mean. Like they don't have to wait on 8 months worth of like UI changes to make it something different. Like they can go and be like, okay, we're adjusting the systems. Overwatch 2's first rank system didn't really have that. You basically had we've talked about it. You went in, you played your up to 20 games or whatever it would be if you had 5 wins, 15 losses. It might have even been even more.
7 wins.
7 wins initially, right?
7 wins, 20 losses.
Exactly. And like, but once you got to a certain point of losses, it just wasn't a good experience. So it just wasn't going to be fun for you. And after every game, you weren't seeing like this. And they were trying to change that. They wanted to be like, well, if your SR goes down, your SR goes up, which is why I think the new bar system they have can kind of give you an idea of what's happening. And I mean, I play MMOs and everything. I just like seeing things go up like that is always fun. So I'm glad they're adding this new system in place, because people just want to like have that direct feedback, and that never happened in Overwatch 2 to begin with. Like your direct feedback was, all right, I'm going 5-2. All right, I didn't climb. Why didn't I climb? But you have no clue. You have no clue, right? Because on paper, that's probably what's happening. You're 5-2, and we know from Overwatch 1, when there was that SAR, that more than likely 5-2 wouldn't climb you out of a rank. But we also don't know what the rank is for Gold 1 to Gold 2. Gold 2 could be more than Gold 2 to Gold 3. Gold 3 could take longer than, all these different variations. We have no idea how they are. So you're just sitting here guessing why you're not climbing. Then you have your hidden MMR, right? You're 5-0, and you go, well, I just deranked. Well, that's on you. Why? Who knows? Who knows why, right? So the rank system became really confusing to a lot of people. And when you would play rank, whether you were new, whether you would play the game forever, you just got really confused as to what was happening, because there was no direct feedback telling you this is why you aren't climbing, or this is why you didn't rank up. And then you go, well, I have to play at least 5 more games. And listen, let's be honest with you. How often are we going 5-0? Right?
Remember the Summit thing? Remember I told you about that?
Kind of. You'd have to remind me on it a little bit.
So
but
Summit was playing Overwatch. He was on his Overwatch arc.
Summit. I think you're talking about the Crater Summit.
No. Yeah, Summit 1G. And
Yeah.
he was on it. It was before the tournament incident that we will not speak of. But he was playing Overwatch, and he turns his camera off because he's like maybe having a snack off stream. You know what Summit does. And he had my video up actually explaining how ranked works. And it's a 20-minute long, basically like my hair might have been like, it must have been like staticking out, like trying to explain how harebrained the system works, because like it was still based off the Overwatch 1 system, just with like a new cosmetic frontal part. So I was like trying to explain how the old system worked. And after about like 20 minutes, he's just like, fuck, I still don't know. I was like, damn it, dude. Like, man, like, and he had no idea. He was like, I don't know how this rank system works. Even though like I went through like everything step by step, like, okay, the reason why this works like this is because of this old system. So like when you play a game or you win this game, like you are moving up, but it won't come up till like you win your 7 games, but you are moving, I promise. Like just didn't click, you know, because it was that complicated. And like that turned him off to the game because he was a competitive gamer, you know?
Well, that's the thing is like a lot of these players, you know, you have like it's almost like 50-50, right? Like obviously we don't have the exact numbers, but I think there's a lot of competitive players and quick play players, right? So you have different variations there. And first of all, somebody been asking quite a few times. Flats and I did not plan out our shirts. These are different color shirts. You can blatantly see that right now. Okay, this is not the same company. This is different shirts. Flats and I didn't plan this out. Back to ranked. So here we go.
Wait, are we all wearing navy blue? Because this is navy blue, but my lighting is
Mine's
different.
black, to be fair.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
in blue.
I'm in blue as well.
And we would like to
This
think
is
that
blue.
Freedo was also in blue, just for the sake of this whole.
I am in
discussion.
spirit.
Yes, and that's what matters here. But yeah, and then like you said, the problem was is you couldn't even describe it perfectly though at that point, Flats, because even though we knew what the SR system was in Overwatch 1, what is Gold 1 to Gold 2? What is Gold 2 to Gold 1? How much SR is that? We don't know because you would think it's 200 per, but is it actually 200 per? Probably not. That's why some people will be in Bronze 5 for a while, and then they have like this different things because you have to climb through higher ranks. You had like an XP bar that you couldn't see, but you would win 5 games and you'd be like, what is going on? That was the problem. There was no direct feedback. So if you're trying to enjoy ranked and you're trying to climb and you're trying to get progression, there was no way to ever see that progression, right? And they added the progression system, which is great, but it doesn't change anything for your ranked progression, does it?
It's funny
So-
you said 200. I thought it was 100 per. Like we even were not.
My point is, but we don't know that because it could have been completely different. Like Gold 4 to Gold 5 could be 500 SR for all we know. But we don't know that. There's no data to go off of that because there's so many variables. So back to what I'm saying, I like that they've added a system now that you can actually see what's happening. People are going to like that feedback loop better. I think, yeah, obviously it's going to be frustrating when you lose games, but it wasn't like I was losing games in the current system and going, you know what? I didn't see it update though, and I'm feeling good about that loss. Yeah, I'm excited. That was a great loss, and it didn't update yet. And it says I'm 4-2 right now, but I'm having a good time. You know, that was I loved the concept that they were going for, but like it was just people like that direct feedback. Can it suck that you go on a 5-game losing streak? Absolutely. I agree with that, but I think honestly in that system you're getting the same result. It was just you had to wait even longer to realize you can't climb. And then you had to get that win. You had to like grind that win that would end up being 5 and 12, and you're sitting there getting all like frustrated because you don't know what's going on with your rank. And that happened a lot of
nonsense too.
Yeah, there was so much stuff there. So I like the new system because now you have a base you can build off of. Let's say the matchmaking isn't perfect, right? And matchmaking is always going to be difficult. There's different variables, right? Like I could be sitting here playing perfectly. You get me into a game, my monitor turns off, right? Already the matchmaking is going to be scuffed at that point. But the point I'm trying to make is that there's going to be variables you can't control with that type of stuff with ranked. But now you have a base that they can go off of. They can build off of that system that you can now understand. And now you have different things like, all right, let's see. Now you have the ability to, go on. I think you've been bringing back streaks, right? They're bringing back win streak like modifiers and stuff like that. You can see it on the bottom. Like things that we haven't had in a while. I mean, technically you could have had it in a while. We have no clue, right? You have all these different variations of stuff that you can see, and you're pretty much going to be told why you climbed, why you didn't climb, etc. So I've talked about it for a year with ranked, and like I said, it's always been funny because Gavin's in the chat a lot, and I'm sure he's been wanting to mention all of this stuff. Like, yes, no, we're fixing this, and you talked about it too. Like it's good to see that they're listening. My guess is they've been listening to this feedback and ranked for a long time. It's just the way they had to change all of these systems to go to where they want it to go probably took a lot longer than we even know. So it's probably been something they've been working on for a while. It's not like they just started, in October, they're like, oh, it's almost BlizzCon time. What are we doing here? Okay, get a screenshot of ranked, put an X through it, and then take over here. I need you to put this randomly here, and we need to get this done by February. My guess is they've probably been working on it for a while. So I'm excited to see where it goes. And I think that if they do it right, and I'm not saying it's going to be perfect, but if they do it right, I think people will be excited to play ranked a little bit more. I also like the grouping restriction thing. I'm curious to see how the queue times will be. But basically, if you're like Diamond 2, you can play with your Bronze 5 friend now. Granted, we don't know how the queue times will be, etc., or all of that. But I'm excited that people get to play more with their friends. I've, as you know, Flats and I used to play all the time together. I don't even know if Flats and I have hit 100 games played together in all of rank since the beginning of Overwatch 2. Because we just can't play with each other. Like sometimes I'm in GM 1 on all my roles, and Flats is, he's in Diamond 4 on support. And I can't.
I'm GM 4, GM 3. What do you mean?
Yeah, but you said it was too many GM players, Flats. So we know what happened there, right? So like at this point, I'm not even able to play with Flats, and I like the idea that I'm able to go and play Overwatch with my friends again. And I'm glad they're adding that system too. But as you can see, I'm pretty passionate about this discussion because I've just seen it for a long time now where I get the same question like, I went 5-2, why didn't I climb? And I'm like, well, I got a lot of reasons for it. I have no idea. Like, I imagine it's because of this, but I can't explain that. Now we're getting the opposite of that. We're going to get a lot of information, and I'm excited about the prospect of that. And I'm just excited because I'm glad they're like really overhauling the way they're making rank look now in comparison to how it was when we started because it was just very, very bare bones. I guess you could say was a good way to explain it. So
Yeah,
ranked.
I think that's a really good. I can see you're passionate, which is great. Like, I'm so glad that they're taking these changes. By the way, Emongg, I don't think we're wearing the same shirt, but we've got the same headphones. So you're coordinating pretty well with
Oh yeah, you got
with the members of the call.
the DT what do you got? Yeah, DT 990s or what was it?
Yeah, I think so. I think so.
Stuff. Yeah, it's no big deal.
We coordinate well. Don't you ever think that our production is shoddy?
We got the glasses.
We may be
Flats and I have the same glasses.
Yeah, we may be having technical audio issues, but hey, the
we
drip is on point. I was gonna say, I will say, you kind of specifically named Gavin, and I'd like to go a step further and say that like I love Gavin Winter so much, dude. Like, I think he's one of the best development If I was to give an award, the best development performance I've seen in a long time, because he not only is directly active in the chats, but even when he was on stage, I think he was like, the way he communicated. I think that's what players really look for from their game and their developers is like, be really upfront with me, be really clear with me. I want to know that you're listening to what I'm listening to, and you're addressing those complaints back to me. I think that's like peak. And I think what we're seeing now is also Gavin's vision of the rank system, right? I don't think he necessarily got to inherit the system he wanted, but now he's getting his control to kind of put it his way. And you can really tell when the developer cares. I don't know how he has the passion for Overwatch. I don't know how a lot of these developers have the passion that they do have, because we're fucking cynical and jaded. Maybe bar Emongg, Fareeha. I know the three of these guys on my side, we'd be fucking burnt out. We'd be like yelling at people and shit. So I don't know how they find the passion.
Away, don't worry. It's not even. But I will say one thing about that too. Gavin, what I love about Gavin, he's also a memer. Just to give everybody context on Gavin too, he's the one that said skill issue on the stage. Like when they were talking about like being able to play with your friends, he goes, "That sounds like a skill issue."
When Aaron was complaining about not being able to play with his kids anymore,
he's like, "Yeah, it sounds like a skill issue." That's Gavin, right? So he's really good at a lot of that stuff, and he's I'm really happy to see that he's able to kind of have some of these things like start to be seen now, which is really cool. He also was a big part of the ping system. So if you love the ping system,
right? And this,
remember
also...
what I was talking in the beginning.
Go ahead, Flats.
That 45-minute conversation.
Yeah.
That was one of the people that came over and joined. Yep. He skipped the whole lunch break to talk to me about the upcoming rank system.
Gavin the GOAT. And I think another thing to mention here, and I'm curious, Fareeha, your thoughts, is what we talked about here, the released grouping restriction. So I think my man Samito misinterpreted, because they said we're removing most grouping restrictions, and he was like, yeah, I can finally stack in GM. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think you probably still won't be able to stack in GM. But as we understand it, at least what we know, you're going to be able to group with pretty much outside of GM. You're going to be able to group with anyone. And what is going to create is narrow and wide matchmaking. So narrow matchmaking is when you're solo or when you're duo, and your duo is fairly close to you. You're going to get narrow matchmaking. Like, the people in the game are not going to be from too far skill tier divisions. But if you have a diamond and a bronze, well, be prepared for a wide matchmaking. So obviously your guys' skill difference is large, so the lobby skill differences will be large. But I think people would be presumably welcome that, is if it means they get to play with their friends. So how did you receive the announcement, Fareeha, and do you think it's like a good step?
I'm excited to see how it actually feels, because we can talk about like the logistics of it on paper, but it's not going to be anything compared to what it's like in practice. I think on paper it sounds really, really good, especially for solo players, because this means that the range of like rank within a match is going to be much tighter. And hopefully that helps with quality of like walking that line of, hey, this game is challenging enough, but you don't feel like you have to literally sell part of your, like, you don't have to sell a kidney in order to win this game. You know, you don't have to drag 600 pounds to like the other side of the finish line in order to win a match. And that's a good thing. Back to what Emongg was saying about the ranked cards and all that kind of stuff. It's like, how do we make losing feel less awful? I think is one of the leading philosophies that led to the rank cards even existing in the first place. But I think that I don't know if you brought this up in your arguments, that 45-minute conversation, Flats, but I feel that that's an inherently flawed place to start from. You know, you should be asking yourself, how do we make, not necessarily how do we get rid of ranked anxiety, but like how do we make the game fun even when you have losses, right? It's like how do we make the games where, you know, you do all you can, or you feel like you just don't play up to par. You know, there's so many situations to account for. You're playing your best game and you still lose, or like you're the reason you lost. How do we make all of those situations still interesting and engaging and not feel like a waste of time or on a slight to your ego or to, you know, your identity? Because I feel like when you're grinding ranked a ton, you inevitably get tied to that number, and there's nothing wrong with that, right? It shows that you care. It shows that you're grinding for something, and you want to, you know, go past that finish line. You want to get that goal, but at the same time, it's like, how do you make that feel better? Even within the umbrella of a loss. And it's like, okay, do we do what Valorant has and just make it sound cool and awesome when you get kills of like the, you know, the pitch ups of like the sound stings, like da 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 da, like that. That's really really cool. Would that help with Overwatch? Would it help to have um I guess like superimposed goals? Like sometimes when I play, back when there was a content drown, back when I wasn't feeling so good about this game, it's like I had to find my own fun. So it's like I would form little rivalries against a person on the enemy team. Say like an Ana was causing me trouble, or like the enemy DPS, and I would get a little rivalry and do silly things to target them specifically, and it would result in wins sometimes. And it's like, could you have these little bounties or these little like extra rules or extra things to spice up a game and give a player external goals outside of simply winning and accruing more SR, rising in rank? And I feel like that's what the hero progression system kind of plays into a little bit, but where else can we see more of that implemented? And I think that would be a cool thing for them to explore.
100%. What they need is the reverse sound of that for Overwatch, where it's like, what the more of your teammates are, it's like wah 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 wah. Like everyone's dead, team wipe. It's like, damn, fuck these guys. My team sucks. But you know, like other games do have it. You know, there's like the Dota, like, you know, they'll have like the rampage when like you're on like a kill streak. Like that kind of stuff feeds the gamer soul, I think. Freedo, I'm curious if you kind of have been energized by these rank updates, or just everything that Fareeha and Emongg were talking about as well, with like trying to address loss aversion, I suppose, for lack of a better term, and the grouping restrictions as well, which I'm sure you might have some thoughts on.
So much to say. My favorite voice line, one of them, I think, is "Wrecking Ball is dominating." So that's for the, it's like a MOBA callback, I feel, or the arena shooters, in fact. And Wrecking Ball was king of the arena. One of my favorite characters, as you can tell. A long list of things I've begged for since 2016. So gotta say I'm happy. I mean, it took a regime change and the like entire CEO to be stepping down, like lawsuit. There's so much we had to do in order to get from there to basically being laughed at to ask it to work like other games that I played. So I'm gonna try to like talk about the grouping and the SR transparency thing in the same point, in that like I played with a friend group in CS:GO for, I don't know, thousands of hours of CS:GO before being a content creator full time, and I loved that. That was like one of my favorite, most cherished gaming moments of my life. And I'll just make a few points about that. Like, I think with the transparency of ranked, one thing that you can do is give almost no information. And if you know kind of how it works, then um, you can surmise it. But ultimately, the goal is just to say, keep playing. Now, nobody really wanted to play the CSGO ranked back in the day. But if you did, it was like, you didn't really know why you had anything. You just had to keep playing. And there was a system behind the scenes. And that's like one way that ranked systems worked in that era, let's say, because ranked games really aren't that old. Like, gaming is old. A lot of shooter things are old, but I think people forget that in the, let's say, CS 1.6 days, or even, so I play a lot of Quake 3 Arena, really dating myself, but there's no such thing as matchmaking. Like matchmaking is like a Call of Duty thing that's like kind of new in the grand scheme of like online gaming. So we can like take it for granted that, of certain things about it. Um, so I'll talk about grouping in a moment. But so I think they just made a mistake in terms of um trying to like make a magic trick of not telling you the negative feedback, but then still explaining it to everyone. So we kind of knew what it was. So it's like it did the worst of all worlds, pretty much, the card system. So I had been conditioned to like ignore ranks. So I mostly ignored that system. The thing that, but I think obviously all the changes they're making is fine too. It's like the transparency will help because one of the major explaining things that they'll say when you go on like a 5-0 card but stay the same is you likely were advantaged in those games. That's like probably the case. But because there is no feedback to know that was the case, which there will be now in season 9, where that little bar is not going to go up as much from a win because it's going to say, well, you were advantaged to win. And that might feel bad too. Like there's a lot of ways that this is going to feel bad, but I think this suits our new community, frankly, because a lot of those mentalities of caring about the immersion into the experience was like Overwatch 1 devs. And I've spoken a lot over the years over the difference of that and what they were good at versus what they were weak at. What they were good at is like making a magically inviting environment for the characters for you to like get into the role of them. But that's not really a competitive shooter game. It's almost like they made the competitive shooter game on accident, and like they really wanted to make the next WoW. Okay, they outwardly said that. It's like, well, we stopped making Overwatch because we wanted to make WoW again. Actually, literally, I like. And the funny thing is, the reality of that being true, I could have never known when I called the game like a Call of Duty for World of Warcraft players. Like that was like an insult, in my opinion, because I wanted it to be the hardcore shooter game it becomes now. Now, fast forward to Overwatch 2, I think the people who are interested in playing this game are playing a real shooter game. Like that's a downside as well because Overwatch 1 was a great melting pot of bringing together lots of other communities like RPG players that maybe never would play a shooter game. We've lost that. Let's just be honest. Like that, but also I don't know if that exists anymore. Like it was cute for the launch of Overwatch 1, but they have already gone in that cycle. Right. Like there was the big peak of like bringing everybody in. It was this phenomenon, first Blizzard game in 10 years, whatever. That's done now. Now we're the hero shooter, more abilities than Valorant, let's say, perhaps. I don't know. We can debate that, but more hero elements than any of these other shooter games that exist. That's what we are. And right. that allows them the space to sort of allow it to be more hardcore. That's music to my ears because that's what I had begged them to do for years. Like Aaron said this in a recent interview, and you've said this before too, I think, but it's like we're dedicating to it being, kind of a sweaty hardcore game. He said this in the IGN interview, in fact, where back then they wanted it to be inviting. And I had to level with them that like that was outside my powers. I think like I disagree with Jeff Kaplan for years on a lot of these things, but I had to grow to respect the man for like being right about the things he could do. Like he did also bring together all of gaming in this one moment, but I also think that doesn't serve the competitive longevity of the game. And now we can just have like a real ranked mode for hardcore ranked players. Okay, so that's all that. Grouping. At the same time, as much as I'm saying all this like competitive try hard stuff, I also have said that fair matchmaking is incredibly overrated because the game is so counter pick and counter strat dependent anyway, even when, and they have stats to say this, like they've said all of what I'm about to say, like in between the lines, right? Like they haven't said the conclusions that I'm saying, but if you're on the wrong comp, but all of your players in the lobby are the exact same SR, you're still going to lose. Like, what do you want? Like, the game is, we've got counter picks in this game, and you may not be at the same skill level of the required character. So I'm not going to say like everyone should learn to swap or whatever. Like, everyone's going to play the game the way they want to, but we're not going to expect the matchmaker to ever fix the feel of how Overwatch works. Where we went on a Mauga rant earlier about, well, here's this niche matchup. I think he wins, right? There's lots of those. And I think the community is really behind the actual depth of the game, in that we've got like a tick-tock counter pick mentality of what the counters actually are. Whereas the entire complexity of the team comp you have is just so impactful of, well, this DPS has a mercy on it, this one doesn't. Like, how do we all adjust to that? Or we have a life weaver, but we can't seem to clear the objective off. I wonder why. It's like he does something amazing over here, but he doesn't do this other thing. And no amount of SR being accurate in the lobby will change the experience of how Overwatch plays from a gameplay mechanic standpoint, which is
Right.
counters are brutal, and counter stratting and counter tacticking. Is that a word? Am I trying to invent language here? Like the tactics that you have of like, let's go play aggressive, or let's play defensive, or let's hide over here, or whatever. There's lots of things you can do in Overwatch, which makes it a beautiful game to me. Now, that's why I think wide matchmaking is going to be just totally fine. Like, everyone's worried about a tank getting gapped by another tank that's like so many layers above, but or ranks above. But I've played enough unranked in my life to know how this works. It's like, I've had games unranked as Ana where my tank was 3 ranks below their tank, but Ana dominates that matchup. And you might say, well, that's because supports are overpowered. Yes, but they're the whole other strategy thing matters too. So it's like, there's other things you can do. You know, is like, do you want the tank or to be your best player, or are you on a Widow map? And maybe that matters. So there's gonna be lots of problems that this creates, right? You're gonna have the hit scan player who's way outmoded on the lobby, and then these plats who have walked in straight lines for their whole lives are now against a player who can hit a shot reliably, and they're gonna be like, oh, that player's hacking, right? That's going to happen. But I think this is only a benefit to the community's perception of the game, because what ends up happening is that players get stuck in their ranked cul-de-sacs of the skill sets and play styles and mentalities that exist in their given rank, and they think like that's what the game is, and they don't really realize the mistakes they're making, right? Like and then they get this really jaded perspective of what can happen in the game, and then you get a, like, you know, support, for example, you know, is a hot topic because it simultaneously is by experts, let's say, and I would consider all of us in this call experts at the game because we've played it so much, have so much experience, etc. We'll all agree support is easily the strongest role. But there's still so many players right now who think it's weak, right? Like, are boundly determined to believe this to be true. And it's like the gap of knowledge between that is like, well, how do we solve that? There is no solving it, basically, other than, you know, maybe watch an awkward unranked to GM and just see like what's possible from that character. So, oh, my team is holding me back. No, they're not. No, it's not. You could run down main and kill everything. Actually, you could just do that too, if you were good enough. But
Right.
The wide matchmaking will create more games like that, and I think it's like, it's not going to actually make a difference. Some games you get rolled, some games you don't. Like, the score lines will be more ridiculous in wide matchmaking games, I think, because obviously some people are just out of their depth, but the result of the game of like how it plays from a flow, you know, like, oh, we're getting spawn trapped, we can't get out. That happens with close matchmaking games. They've said this in blog posts, right? It's going to happen anyway. So I'm so like proud of them for them to, or happy, I guess, for them to gather that data. They gathered the data from the team queue. They're like, stomps are happening anyway. So it's like, might as well just at least play with your friends, because at least me personally, I think executing the strategy that you think is right for you and your friends for that given situation, we can debate what the right thing is, but what you want to do, that's where the game is fun, in my opinion. And the problem with solo queue matchmaking is like, when everyone has that mentality, well, sometimes you just get the wrong mix of things. And if you want to have a, like I do, a strategy focused approach to the game, it's like, I have so much more fun when I'm playing with friends and we at least can synergize the thing we can do. And I know what their weaknesses are, they know what mine is.
Right.
And you know, the game's like so much more fun that way. So the more we develop any amount of that in our community, as opposed to the solo queue stuck in a metal rank my whole career and it's everyone else's fault but mine, like, get out of that. Like, how about you play someone 3 ranks above you in this new wide matchmaking and see how that goes for you? Because I guarantee you, like, step 1, if you're in metal ranks, your movement's bad. Like, not just bad, but like hilariously bad, where you're a free kill constantly.
I mean, people will, I'm sure, undoubtedly complain no matter what. But I think the biggest boon, on top of everything you listed, is just people should be able to play with their friends. Like it's really that simple. I think, like you have IRL friends. Sam complains about this all the time. It's like you have IRL friends. Oh, we moved out of the range from each other. We can't keep playing. And honestly, that's like a loss for both parties, right? Like, because if your friend isn't online anymore, you're not going to want to play as much. So I think just whatever wild games it may result in, as long as with your buddy, it'll be fun. And I'm sure the ultimate duo here can attest to that.
Last
Oh,
night
and another point I want to make.
win rate.
So I'm just gonna let Emongg go because I do want to give everyone.
Oh no, I was just saying that Flats and I have less than 50% win rate when we stack. We don't win, but we have a good time. So.
And everyone has a good time watching you. I mean, the number of people who, the first instinct of like when we announced 5v5 was like, what about the Emongg flat stack? Like it's about the fun and the entertainment. I think at the end of the day, that's what the game is for, more than necessarily the most balanced game or like in terms of the matchmaking, because
well your content rank disparity, right? Like the challenges and stuff, like half of
Right.
Overwatch content is that. That's all I wanted to say is like that people love that. So it's like
Right.
I think letting the game be more about that is like just like a win. Because think
Right.
of the videos that are going to come out now of like, oh, I played in ranked versus a bronze, like that's now in the game.
Right, and it'll be I look forward to it. I think it's a good change. And you kind of mentioned, Freedo, in your discussion there about sweaty, like wanting to go back to sweaty competitive gaming. What they actually talked about as the most sweaty mode they've ever released is Clash, that they showed us in the BlizzCon presentation. Essentially 5 CP. They couldn't make 2 CP work. We've got 5 now. Let's see if that makes it any better. People, any thoughts, like any burning thoughts on Clash? Obviously, we don't know too many details, but the developers themselves seem excited. This is like a very competitive mode. So I'm going to go to Fareeha. Fareeha, did you have any gut instincts off of Clash?
I played a lot of TF2 growing up, and so I saw this game mode and I instantly thought of TF2's, I think it's called 5 CP in that game. It's called something else. But yeah, no, it's a very sweaty game mode. I feel like they have made a very interesting change, only having, was it 1 capture point active at a time instead of 2?
Right.
Because TF2 doesn't have that rule. TF2 kind of divides its capture points because those of you who don't know, it's usually a 12v12 game. And so it's a lot more chaotic. There's a lot more moving pieces. And so it can work to kind of divide a team that way. But yeah, no, I think it'll be interesting. I want to play it. I want to see what it feels like.
Flats, how about you?
First thing I thought of was like Battlefield, kind of. I feel like those like old Battlefield game modes that were like similar in some ways. Not entirely 1-to-1. Apparently, I never played TF2, but apparently TF2 was a much closer comparison. But my only thing I'm gonna say is, first off, I like the idea of adding new game modes. It keeps the game fresh and it keeps it fun. And I think they learned their lesson from Push. Because I still believe this, that the reason why people hate Push so much is because they jammed it down our throats for like the whole beta period, both beta periods, and then at the beginning of Overwatch, like they wanted data, so they're like, every other game you're gonna play Push, and then just like, it was only 2 maps at the time, and so everyone hated it. And then Esperanza came out, I was like, oh, this is actually not that bad. And I was like, well, they didn't force it every game, that's why you don't think it's that bad. Plus it's a decent map, but at the same time, like, I think they learned their lesson a little bit, because I don't feel disdain towards Flashpoint, but like I did not like Push as much as, I don't think anybody really liked Push that much, even though like it was an okay game mode. It was better than 2CP, hot take maybe. But like as long as it's not jammed down our throats, I think that's fine. My only concern, just come back around, is I hope that because of their development cycle, you're only getting 3 heroes a year. That means you're also going to get about 3 maps a year. I want to see more hybrid maps. I want to see more escort maps. I want to see more control point maps. I want to see more those game modes, because like to me that's core Overwatch. Like really, like I think that those maps not only are like some of my favorites, but to take it one step further, I think that they also need adjustments, and I think they've done a good job with like Gibraltar, right, is like a good example. And they should keep implementing on that, because I still hate Dorado. Dorado sucks. I think it's one of like the worst maps in the game. And I think it's been Emong's idea for forever to like add like a ramp or something to second point for attackers to be able to fight for high ground, because it's fucking ass to go all the way to Narnia around the side and go up the stairs and come all the way around. And that's in ranked. And it's like, you ever try to try to herd 5 ranked players together? It's like herding cats. You know what I mean? Like, good luck, dude. You always get that one guy. No, I'm just gonna off angle. Goes off the side, gets one clipped, and it's like
someone gets one shot, and then you have
I'm
to
just like,
wait
all right,
and-
dude, this is awful. And then you finally get up there, and they all back away, and there's a widow in the corner. They're both their supports are on the other side. Their tank actually left, and now you're just like, well, now we own high ground. Well, what's our comp? Oh, we're running like somber Cass. Oh, we have no range. Okay, well, I guess we'll just fucking stand here then. You know, so it's always been a terrible time. So I think it's fine to add new game modes. I think it's good, but I also maybe I'm a little bit greedy in wanting the fact that I want more of the core game mode maps. Plus, I want to see more updates to old maps to make them more fun, more playable. Because 5v5 was supposed to have those changes come with it, and it didn't really. So like, it's gotta come at some point. I know there's only so many hours they can put in, but if you add another game mode, does that mean we're going to be getting like no more push maps? Does that mean we're going to be no more flashpoint maps? You know what I mean? It's like, and you kind of the more game modes you add with only getting 3 maps a year, that can kind of compound kind of quick. So that's my one concern.
Yeah, I think it's a good point you bring up, and this is where like I put my personal desires behind what might be best for the game, because I'm not a fan of more modes. I don't think we necessarily need more modes personally. Because I think these things are interesting. They're like at odds with each other, where more modes is good for the wider community, right? Like, people enjoy new content, right? So people will receive a new map more than a reworked old map better, right? And so I recognize that adding a new game mode, adding new maps, that's gonna be. I hope we're not getting tech audio noises, but you know, we're not gonna. So it's not gonna generate the same buzz. But I get it. It's for the wider community. But I think I've lost my train of thought. I'm gone. I'm so worried about these fucking audio issues. But I basically, TLDR, I would prefer them to, as Flat said, work on old maps and also new maps in the old map types, rather than new game modes, which come with their own rule sets, which can be potentially confusing for new players and all that jazz. And it does make me think that we're going to probably go back to map pools again. They did say when they removed map pools, they were like, we're not done with it forever. Like, it may come back. And the more modes you add, I feel like the more incentivized they are to, like, maybe one season be
That's
like...
a bad idea. That's a really,
I don't want it.
Really bad idea. Do not do that. Like,
I don't
you are
want
going
it,
to create disdain for maps again, you know?
Right. And that's I think the balance of, like, the more, like, you know, if it's a competitive game, you just play on the same fucking map all the time and hard grind it. And then the more casual the game, 50 maps, and you barely have chance to, like, I've played Samoa like a handful of times. I have very little idea what the optimal plays are on each points, right? Like, okay, you can watch the World Cup and get a good idea, but how many people are doing that? Like, how many people are watching pro play to be like, okay, this is what you do on these points. So there will come these moments where you're going to have very little experience on a map, but I think in the larger scheme of things, that's okay. While personally it might make a more competitive game to have less, I'm okay with it for the general fun of the game, because that's what it's all about.
I like the variety it brings, you know?
Sure.
I just think that if we have different map design archetypes, like maps with more verticality and stuff like that, you could potentially see Winston Diva get played even when they're not hard meta. And it's like, wouldn't that be what people want more of? It's like, I think so much of the issue and the resentment that builds up over the course of months when we have like a hard stale meta. Also, Cat. Oh my goodness.
He's vibing.
He's vibing. Yeah, like that resentment comes from a lack of change. You know, when something is so powerful for so long, and it's like Sigma Baptiste Bastion all the time, even if you enjoy those characters, I mean, maybe you like it, but like, I don't know. For the majority of people, I feel like you get tired of that and you stop playing. So,
Right.
more game modes, potentially encouraging different kinds of skills on the characters and the comps that you can form to navigate. That's great. We'll have to see.
Yeah, I also
One
like
thing
that they... Go ahead.
I was
Is that you?
gonna say one thing, just to go to Flat's discussion about Dorado. that map doesn't really like necessarily incentivize you to want to take high ground at second point, which becomes an issue on such a high ground dominant map, which is why I've always suggested maybe they go like a ramp up instead of having to go all the way around. Because like you just get stuck on the ground. One thing I about Clash we're talking about is if I recall correctly, did they say how much the time limit was on that? Because one thing that's interesting about that mode, and it's going to be one of the first few modes that like, it sounds like you won't be able to stomp it. Like even if you get 4 points, they made it sound like the last spawn's going to be really long and it's really hard to capture 5 points. So we might one of the first game modes we've had in Overwatch where like, you might just go the whole time limit. Like you might just actually play the whole time limit, which you don't have that in a lot of modes. You can have like push, you can complete it in 2 minutes. King's Row, you can full hold on first point. Dorado, you can have 4.5 minutes left, and then you just kind of get full held on first. So it's going to be interesting to see how that goes. If it's a game that has like, I guess Koth technically.
They have a score
Well,
cap that
yes.
they are
Score cap?
adjusting. Yeah, I have a lot to say on this, but you can keep going.
Yeah.
But if we
I
want
was
to
just
get like the rules out to better the
That'll be good
discussion,
to know.
maybe.
Because it sounds like it could be one of those game modes that has that. But I like new stuff. I've been saying Flats brought it up earlier. We didn't have anything for years. We get excited over like they'll tell us they're adding the weapon charm tomorrow, and Flats is going to have a 10-minute react video up on it. Like we're pumped for anything new. You know what I mean? Like it's like we're excited for stuff. So I like the idea of new modes. I do think they should keep working on new maps. But I mean, I love what they did with Gibraltar, right? I love what they did with that, where they can make changes. I think that's what Flats is bringing up. Gibraltar, Route 66. I mean, they made a slight changes, and they're also still working on like the systems of that, right? We still have that quick play change, which might come to ranks soon too, where
Right.
you have like these spawn waves. So they're still making those changes to previous things. It's just, I think the concern Flats has is like, are you just going to only make maps for the new modes, and then you don't go and make like a hybrid map or an escort map? My guess is they're probably doing both, but I don't know how that stuff works. So,
Right. To clarify, actually, Gavin said we're still working on the details of that in reference to the time limit, point limit. Freedo, you wanted to expand on that.
Yes, plenty. So, how I feel about the maps, I'll say second. First, let's just like explain as I understand Clash from how they described it. So it's a tug of war game mode, and I think there's a lot of comparisons to CP, but because it's tug of war in nature, I think it actually has quite a few similarities to push. But the difference is the push robot kind of allows you to adjust where the fights happen, but with these capture points, they're preset and determined. So to that degree, it does feel like assault in terms of there'll be meta positions because you have to go a certain way. Whereas, and it's a sort of a fun part about push in a way that in theory you can kind of control where you fight more. So fights can happen in strange places. The actual meta is just avoiding those actually and like camping the lead. And then a benefit Clash has over that is that as you make progress, so let's say the push equivalent is going and get that checkpoint. We know, like in theory, that's going to add up over time, but it doesn't matter till the end. Like they could still counterpick you, ults go badly for you, and then they snowball you all the way back. And then you getting any progress earlier in the game may not have mattered. Now, maybe it mattered too much at certain versions, so really tryhard comp people might be cringing at me kind of saying that that's a downside, but the benefit of Clash now is that you just literally get a score for capping 1 point or however many. And so there's a score that ticks up over time. So you don't necessarily have to complete the map, just like you don't in push. But like, let's say getting the first checkpoint multiple times, but you struggled to like close out the game more or less. They can't make a big comeback. So if you got the push bot to the first checkpoint 5 times over and over again and like effectively capped it, let's say, like if it was a point, you in Clash you'll be getting points for that, and they can't necessarily easily snowball it all the way back unless they full cap, I suppose. Like they have to cap all of them, but it's like because there's so many points, you like in theory it would take longer. So I'm kind of curious. It's like the dynamics of having a lead, how easy it is to snowball, how the engagements happen. Do you play more defensive in it? These are still like questions I have, but in theory, I think Clash is an improvement on push, more or less, to kind of stabilize it, to not be so snowbally and hectic. And honestly, the lack of push is what I think people don't like about push, is like when you don't push and you're just like hide, like camp, because if the objective doesn't tick up progress for you, why play it? Then play the ult economy game, because ults are so powerful, right? Whereas I think Overwatch is more fun when you have to make those split second decisions of like, are we going to retake? Do we have a chance? Like those big play opportunities of rushing onto the objective and making something happen. So my imagination is Clash has that. And I think just as well, the art of like Hanamura again and Honoka,
Right.
it does hit different. You know, it's like Hanamura is like a beautiful map that we all hate, like playing, I think, some to some degree. Like I'm so glad that we don't have to play to Assault anymore, despite mourning some of the tactical depth that was lost. And I think this might be a happy middle point. To the
Right.
discussion of like modes in general, I'm like super happy actually about all the modes, and I actually hope they don't ever add map pools in this game, because again, played other hardcore games like in CS:GO, you'll get a map rotation, and it's a super sweaty idea of like, here's the preset positions that you'll have to learn how to play, and you know how many thousands of hours I've put into Inferno Banana, you know, like just mastering those angles. But Overwatch is like a different game. It's like we've got all these different heroes, like allowing the diversity, and since we get random maps, random teammates, random everything, like just having more of that. I have not gotten sick of a map since we've added Flashpoint, because
Right.
the number, now I will kind of maybe side with Flats a little bit, where like some of my favorite maps maybe I don't see as much, but I've never gotten sick of any map or mode so far, because it's been diverse enough. And then I also will echo Fareeha's point where that helps the meta as well. Like the meta staleness, for whatever you don't like, there's like enough variety of things you could express yourself on. And this is really the only end game for this game, in my opinion. Is like everyone's got different opinions on how they want to play the game and different skill sets they want expressed. Just having more of everything is kind of the best thing I think they could do. Because otherwise, the more limited it gets, the more punishing it feels to do that. Where if you put map restrictions in or like thin it out.
Right.
So overall, like
Yeah, the staleness.
I didn't expect to feel this way. Is kind of what I guess I'm surprised. It's like I sort of felt like, who cares? Like we just, maps are irrelevant. Just, you know, collide together in a team comp battle. But they have mattered quite a lot, because the things that are good on an old school control point, which is like kind of choke heavy, those are like the only maps really have that are Overwatch 1 in nature, where there's still some brutal ring outs and chokes, versus the wide open, absolutely wide open map of Surfasa. It's just like flank city everywhere, and push is somewhere in between as well, where there's like set fights but lots of flanks too. I don't know, I like moving in my maps personally. Like I don't ever want to
Yeah,
be stuck at
and
a
that
choke with my team ever again. I like flanking.
and that's the one thing I would bring up for Clash, is the only, like, I'm also with all you guys. I think I'm excited to see it. I think it should be fun. The only one thing I would flag up is that you might play that one center point a lot. Like if the game is theoretically close, and you know, let's say you start in the middle, one team gets the middle point and then they push there, then that team comes back, they win that point back. You're going to be fighting for that center point a lot. So I do wonder if there's going to be like a bit of staleness on the player side, where they're like, oh my god, for the 40th time now we're going to fight over this one point. You know, you're like, that one point will have to be very well designed so that people don't get bored of,
Or
let's
they
say,
change
this.
momentum.
Sorry?
Sorry, just there's a momentum mechanic in these sometimes where you cap faster if like you gain an advantage. They didn't mention this at all, but I'm just saying like that's one way you could solve it. It's like
Sure.
if you've capped it before, the next time you cap it is faster, let's say. But that also could lead to other problems. I'm just saying like there's alterations on this that we've seen in lots of different games.
Sure. Awesome. Does anyone else have any thoughts on the Clash mode, or just this kind of discussion on maps and modes before we move on to talking about the World Cup? No? Okay, well, I've got the two premier World Cup co-streamers right here alongside me, so it's great to bring it up now. I mean, I think it was an incredibly exciting World Cup. I feel like everyone said that it was some of the best esports they'd seen. Like that last day was like the best day of esports they'd ever seen. Of course, we had some controversy with like the Canada match, for example, and stuff like that. But overall, yeah, how did you guys, as the co-streamers of the World Cup, particularly Flats and Emongg, how did you guys rate the World Cup, and what do you see as its future going forward? So I'll go to Emongg first.
I thought it was great that it went to a bunch of map 5s. I think it's very rare you see that in a lot of tournaments where it just keeps going to like the last map and you have like these really like epic matches. I do think I think Flats and I probably have a similar mindset in this one. I was confused when they said they were like they're gonna watch it off stream. I figured they would just pause it, do the thing, and then come back to the match. I feel like that would have been just I was surprised by that. I thought they were gonna pause it and then just go back to the match if they were gonna do that if it was running over schedule, like rather than just be like, no, we're gonna play it off stream and just we're gonna randomly show it in between like a break sometime.
Do you want to
I was
just
a bit
explain?
surprised by that.
Sorry, do you want to quickly just explain for anyone who doesn't know the context what this is referring to?
So Canada was playing their match, and this was against Korea at the time? South Korea? I can't remember what team they were.
Yep.
Yeah, okay, I think it was. And basically, what happened is that the opening ceremony was going to start, which is great. I mean, the open ceremony is a great part of BlizzCon, but then they continued the match during the opening ceremony, so you didn't get to see the opening ceremony. You didn't get to see the match because the opening ceremony was played on every stream, so it was played off stream, which I think a lot of people wanted this at the very least pause it, be like, hey, we have this schedule, and then come back and play it on stream.
Can I add to this a little bit, please?
Absolutely.
So, so Canada's match was at 10, and they weren't letting people in at that time. So the team basically worked hard all year long. This doesn't seem to be very widely known, but Overwatch World Cup stuff started way earlier this year. Like we had things as early as like April and May, I'm pretty sure, was when the preliminary like matches started happening, and like you had to finalize a roster, everything. And to go through all of that work and like not get a walkout at BlizzCon and not have anybody in the stadium to watch your match must have been really gutting for the players, and I really felt for them there because that I feel like Canada we got done so dirty. And it wasn't just that it got cut to the opening ceremony, it got cut to like a 30-minute starting soon screen. So like we could have just finished watching the match. Like it could have just been a lower third on the stream, or like been a little panel that comes on the side. But no, it was really gutting, and they put up a really good fight too. But yeah,
Right, and the only updates were from Reinforced live tweeting what was happening, and that's like the only public way anyone knew what was happening. So yeah, carry on, Emongg. That obviously that was a problem, but
I think I remember finding out from chat because Flats and I were just like sitting there sitting in our comfy chairs watching the match. Or those chairs were actually comfy. I got to say that I was surprised. But yeah, I wish that would have at least had the opportunity to finish that match on the stage in front of the stream rather than like you said, like finding out through tweets. I just think that would have been. I would have liked that. Overall, like I said, my take on it is I had a great time personally. It was obviously really fun being able to watch all the World Cup matches in front of like a crowd and all of that. And by watch them, we were there for about half of them because Flats has told a story about how we would just kind of get. Once we got up, we'd be back in about an hour. So whoever was covering was doing a great job covering. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It was fun. I really hope we don't know what's happening yet with like esports in general in Overwatch, but I really do hope they do World Cup again. I think like I would love to see World Cup again. I think it's just such a I really hope they do. And I think they will, but you never know. We really have no idea. I'm sure we'll find more and more of this information about what they're doing next. Probably will be, I guess, is sooner than later. But I enjoyed it. I had a good time with it. I really enjoyed watching close matches. And I also liked a little bit of variety of the comps we saw too. It wasn't like you were just watching like the same face roll comps where you just like run the same thing and you just mirror. We saw a lot of like different variations of comps. We saw Doomfist comps that were so cool to see, and Sigma comps, and not just May Bastion. We saw May Sim. We saw some Bastion Sim. Like we saw these comps that were just super fun to watch, and I enjoyed it. It was really cool to see a very competitive tournament, and I think that's always great. Flats?
Yeah, I think you nailed most of it. It was insane. The Canada thing was very fucked up. And actually even the next day the China-Korea game was fucked up because I remember when it started, people were like, "Oh my god, the whole venue's empty." I'm like, "Dude, the door's not open yet." Like, first off, security, God bless Megan, came and found me because we got stopped 15 times on the way into the arena when we're going into co-stream. Like, Like random security guards were coming over, and like I'm not joking. At one point, there was actually 3 in a row. The second one watched the first one stop us, then let us through, and then they stopped us, and then the third one watched the second one stop us, and then they let us through, and then the third one still stopped us, and I'm like, I have a bird's eye view. I'm kind of tall, so I get to see this, right? And I'm literally looking you dead in the eyes, and you're looking me dead in the eyes, and this other security person just walked us by. Why are you still stopping us? What are you doing? Like, hello? Like, you know? And it kept happening over and over and over and over. And the first day, us trying to get in the damn venue, they sent us the other side of the whole fucking BlizzCon. And then we get over there and they're like, oh no, it's actually back the other way. So like, and that's not Blizzard though, that's the arena security. They're 2 different entities. But like, God, that was fucking awful. That was so bad. And the worst part was that Korea-China game by the end was electric. Like it was packed. And like even where we were, so like if I could be a little bit nitpicky, I wish we were a little more inside of the arena than outside the arena, because like there was stands and stuff, and like we were on the back side of the stands with like big ass TVs above our head, right? And I know why, because there wasn't a ton of room. Like I understand that. Personally though, I would have loved to be more in the action, because like all the screams were coming from behind us. And it's like nothing was bad about the crowd in front of us, but like it was just like rows of chairs. And then it was like, I think I counted it was like 11 by 11 or 12 by 12. And then there was 3 sections of 12 by 12. So like it was a good amount of people. And then there was like 4 or 5 rows of people standing in the back and people sitting in the middle aisles. So it was packed.
It was packed.
But you know, most of the loud people were behind us, so like we didn't get to be like totally part of the action, which I'll admit I was a little bit disappointed about that. But that's nitpicking, right? Like I'm being highly critical at that point. But like even the first half of the China game, like it was empty. It was the South Korea China game was empty, and then after I think it was like map 3 is like when they started doing like the chants for each side, like trying to get them hyped up. The arena wasn't even fully filled at that point because like security is still letting them in, right? Like it was mind-blowing. Like, and I understand it. Like I know why it probably logistically was a little bit difficult, but like come on, like that took away so much of like what potentially could have been an even more electric experience. Because at least to me personally, I've watched a lot of competitive Overwatch over the years. That was probably the best matches of Overwatch I've ever seen at the highest level and competitive level. And I went to grand finals like 2019 at the Flyers Stadium, and like that place was like amazing. That was a huge, cool event. I would argue that the games themselves were better than that, but obviously a different venue, smaller amount. But the crowd was just as electric. It was just so much smaller because they literally couldn't get in the fucking door, and like that's a problem. You know what I mean? Like that is so bad. But coming back, I want to do say though, I think if anything, this should have proven that Overwatch esports shouldn't be dead. It's just unfortunate that Overwatch League was not the best, and I think most people know my opinions on a lot of that stuff. And hopefully, whatever comes from the ashes of that really does go back to highlighting the players, and highlighting the game, and highlighting the esport, and highlighting the community, because realistically, there was a lot of things that happened. There was a lot of greed, like going to YouTube, worse user experience, trying to go home and away, and traveling the globe for this. I think right around the time they left the BlizzCon arena, it kind of all went to shit. So I think there's good hope. I think World Cup proved it. But I guess we just have to wait and see. But I'd be very surprised if World Cup didn't come back next year. I bet it was a huge success. Oh, sorry. One last thing. I have one last point. The crowdfunding was really good. But I was really, really disappointed that there was no way to track it in real time. I thought that was a really big miss. And
Yep.
I saw someone say in chat earlier, I'm not 100% sure it's true. I haven't looked into it, but apparently like the goal for like the weapon charms was like 750K, and apparently we didn't hit that. But it's like, how the fuck would we have known if we didn't hit that? Because there was no tracker. There's no website tracker, no in-game tracker. There's nothing. And, you know, especially when you're a company like Blizzard and you don't have the best reputation, you know, and there was a previous WoW scandal apparently in the past with like, you know, crowdfunding. Not being transparent about that stuff is a major miss. And I think could have even been better if there was a public tracker somewhere. So for next year, if that's not somewhere, if they decide to do it again, I don't know what y'all doing. So
Yeah, and hopefully they can be a stepping stone. It's nice that they added that, and hopefully in the future they can refine it, because again, we know in other games it works so well. Dota's TI, $1 billion, money that they rake in and give out to the players is really amazing. Fareeha, you are the team, or you were the Team Canada social lead, so you kind of were very directly involved as well in the World Cup. So you've already mentioned the problems that Team Canada faced, but as a viewer, as someone there, like, what were your thoughts on the World Cup? And as these guys have mentioned, like, you kind of presumably want the World Cup to return, and how do you view the life of Overwatch esports as well?
I think the World Cup was super, super hype. It's always been one of the best events because of how strong the stories are. Like there is an element of rooting for teams that you don't really get as much with the Overwatch League, because that kind of loyalty and that kind of following a team, it doesn't really exist when you have all these, like, you have like the Seoul dynasty, but the players aren't from Seoul. Like you have you have like I don't know, the Florida Mayhem, and it doesn't make sense to have all these city names and then not have any tie to the actual city itself. But you have that with the World Cup. You have that kind of loyalty, like, right off the rip. It's like, okay, I'm rooting for you. Or like you have underdogs of underrepresented nations and regions that aren't as supported in esports, right? Like we know that SA doesn't get a lot of help. They, like, their servers got shut down. You also see China isn't really supported at all with Blizzard games in general. So it's like you have all these stories that get spun, and that's so, so interesting. What Flats was saying about the crowdfunding, oh my gosh, I'm sorry. Oh, my lungs. There, I will just say that I wish there was more transparency. That is all I'll say, because I think Blizzard really dropped the ball on a lot of things in regards to the finances of this entire event, and I wish there was more transparency, because that would be so much better for everybody involved. And yeah, I think everybody who was involved did a really, really great job. There was a lot of heart in this event, and you could feel it.
I know from Freeha, or knowing Freeha, I know there's so much that she's biting her tongue on right now in regards to talking about the World Cup, but I respect that. We don't want to cause no controversy or anything here. So I will just, yeah, go ahead, Emongg.
I was gonna say, I think like the international was always a good example of like those crowdfunding situations where people just love to see that, like, that number go up, and they would always showcase what you would get when you get to a certain point. Like Flat said, I mean, you have no idea what your, like, a weapon charm was at 750,000 until they randomly said it, right? Like, and people don't know any of that stuff because you can't even get to those goals. Like, it's just I was very surprised they didn't do a live tracker. Hopefully they do that next year, and obviously with other stuff too, which Freeha isn't going into full detail with that stuff, but I get it too. Like, hopefully they
Isn't I heard from somebody that the final prize pool was like $500,000. I don't even know if that's true. Like I didn't even see that for myself.
I think that number was the last I heard. They said
Yeah.
it was at 500K, but maybe.
Yeah, and this does deflect poorly on that element. I mean, for all, we are full of praise. I do want to reinforce that. I think all of us were just like, it was an amazing event, and I'm so glad they did it. But it is worth pointing these things out. And actually, you mentioned the TI. Oh, sorry, Flats, you wanted to say something?
Just I have the numbers. So apparently the icons were 500K goal, and the weapon charms was 750K. We got the icons, we did not get the weapon charms, so it's somewhere between 500K and 750K. That's all we know.
Which is, again, we should, like, as viewers who are being asked to crowdfund it, we should know where they're at. I think someone in my chat saying Zoe's mentioned that it reached 500K, but I still think that we shouldn't need that live. Like, there should just be something there. And I actually want to bring up the TI, actually, because you brought it up, Emongg, and I've actually been playing a lot of Dota recently, and I bought the TI Battle Pass. So I want to give some insight into, like, how amazing it actually is, how it works. So basically, it's called the Compendium, and you buy it, and it unlocks the Compendium Battle Pass track, right? And with it comes, like, so many awesome features. So for this sounds like I'm selling for Dota, but I promise I'm sadly not on commission for Valve.
Salesman, we're ready.
Sadly. So, like, you get basically you get the rewards track. So first you get a bunch of quests. So it'll be like, play 2 heroes that were played by this team So for example, if you've got a team that you like, it'll say play these two heroes and win with them. So it might be like play Sigma and win, and play BAP and win one time. So you get that as one reward track. Then you get a Fantasy World Cup, so you get, or Fancy TI. So you basically get to select a team of your players that like they're like your fantasy. You know, if you've ever played like fantasy football, it's the same idea where let's say you select one player from Team USA, one player from Team Netherlands, and one player from Team China, and then their real-time performance wins your digital version points that you then that add to the compendium. So you keep leveling up the compendium by doing these quests, by getting your player fancy. There's also like a bingo card, so like every time a player you own does something, it like hits one of the lines of the bingo card, which also gets you
Like
points.
air bingo.
Exactly. And then once you complete levels, you get more and more cosmetics. So there's like loads of in-game cosmetics that you unlock based off of like how far your compendium goes. So it's like really engaging. I think as someone who barely has watched it, I'm still like, oh, I kind of want to check in and see the guys I bought for my team, like how are they doing? Like, do I need to swap them out? You know, all these factors that I think are really, really cool. So I think that like, obviously, again, I think this was a great first step. Would love to see them develop it more and really refine these situations. So you feel that connection. So I think I echo Fareeha's statements 100% that as someone who has lost a lot of interest in Overwatch esports over the years, like I was really hyped about Season 1 Overwatch League, and over the years that interest has dwindled. I found myself really enjoying the World Cup as well because of the stories, because of like how connected it felt to the players, to the national teams. You know, you're just automatically like, if your nation or a nation you like is in the World Cup, you're automatically like, I have a team to root for, right? I'm not, you know, hugely following the team UK, but when they're playing, I'm like, well, I hope they win because I'm from the UK, so I want them to win, right? So it's like a very, very simple relationship that it forms that I agree the Soulless Corpa 20 Overwatch League teams all based in, you know, the same place, you know, with the same players that they keep trading between back and forth each other. Like you lose track of who's in what. Like it becomes very hard to feel the same passion, I think, for an average viewer than the World Cup brought. So that's my thoughts. Freedo, I'm curious if you had any thoughts about the World Cup.
Yeah, I think it's the future for sure. I mean, I'll echo and maybe not repeat all the complaints and areas for improvement, but I guess I'll focus on the transition from Owl now and how obvious the mistakes of Owl were, in my opinion, where they modeled it based off of American sports leagues, which are very successful here. And even some of them are successful internationally, like the NBA does really well, for example, globally. That's probably something a lot of people don't know. Like the NFL is just here for, and we got Emongg who does an NFL show, and I know Flats is a football fan. I'm as well. So like in some ways, the Overwatch League made sense for us, but then anyone from a global point of view is like scratching their heads, and then anyone from an esports point of view is even scratching their heads more, because this whole concept of having regional ties to esports teams always existed in every esport ever. Because first of all, we're playing online video games, so it's like you could, there's no borders to begin with. We're on the internet. So that's step one. So it's like the whole like needing to go somewhere already was broken by that. But a lot of regional teams existed because of just the like the camaraderie, speaking the same language, etc. And so without having strict regional requirements, they existed in esports anyway, especially with these team-based games. CSGO is a great one for this. Like, had a classic Polish team for a very long time, a great Brazilian team for a very long time. Once in a while, an NA team will come out, and that is so much easier to track as opposed to a forced new brand you have to accept. Whereas we know the brand of a country because it's existed for a long time, right? We can understand their story without needing an explanation of like, all right, the Florida Mayhem, this last season of Overwatch League, I was a huge fan of watching because like at the start of the league, they won the first like preseason tournament, and a lot of the analysts were like, oh, these guys aren't that good. The other teams are going to surpass them. And over here, like, no, someone's the guy. I'm like, someone is the guy. He's the Overwatch 2 tank player that you want on your team because he doesn't have to be swapped out. and plays all these tanks and to an elite degree. Anyway, they go on to win the league. So it's like that team for me resonated a lot because I could put a personality to that story. But then there's a lot of other ones that are just kind of like hard to track, essentially. Like they're hard to follow. I sometimes forget who's on what team or who's from what region, and you know, as they get traded around as you do in a league. So anyway, I say all that to make a final point, and this has kind of been rumored, I suppose, by a lot of insiders, but I actually suspect that they kind of like build out the Overwatch League to be, sorry, the Overwatch World Cup to be bigger. They're going to build out the Overwatch World Cup to be bigger, and then that's like the final frontier of the competitive game. That's what I think, or at the very least, different regional things, because that's what's like easy to do and has already been done in esports. Like there might be more tournaments on top of that, but like the Blizzard sanctioned thing, I think, is they'll just lean into the World Cup because it's worked on multiple levels, and you know, for all the reasons I suppose everyone has said. So I look forward to that. I think that's good because I liked esports before they tried to make these, you know, what should be a nation league into a global league. It's like if it's going to be global anyway, then just let it be the World Cup, right? Like what like tangible difference other than maybe like you can get a certain amount of foreigners to your team, but that also sometimes breaks the immersion. So I'm a little curious how that pans out. It's like you know, if we have hundreds of elite tier Koreans and then only dozens in another country, like that is concerning. It's like it's easy to look at this now and Korea taking, I believe, what was it, fourth or third, or what did they get in the end? Anyone remember?
Fourth.
They placed fourth.
Fourth.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
Finland
like,
won.
you know, there's maybe reasons why you could say that, like that team wasn't equipped to handle the meta or whatever, and there's so many different teams they could put up, but you know, there was an era where no team was touching that region, and now like the Chinese region, for example, upgraded from the Shanghai Dragons to now being like they had a lot of playoff caliber players, but then as far as the Overwatch World Cup is concerned, they're like a top team as well, and then they lost.
Right.
So we're like spoiled for the diversity now. So it's like that's one limitation though that like could be worrying, is if our talent pool is too regionalized. But we have what we have. I don't know. Like going back to like Apex and having them have their own competitive scene, I think is fine for the game. And then if you
Right.
want to compete as like an NA player, like it would be so much better rather than forcing more NA pros to exist to like to try to do the envious route from Apex, where Taimu and the gang went over to Korea and won a tournament, which had never been done before. It's like I prefer that world rather than the like attempt to market mostly Korean team with your one North American player who has to learn budget Korean. And it's like it's like all doomed to fail because it's like there's an arms race to make the best possible team and then still relate. And no team really nailed that, in my opinion. Maybe the Shock, and that's about it.
Right. Yeah, and I think this brings up a good area, which we can kind of, this will be the last thing, and then we'll head to concluding thoughts after this. But I'm just curious of like what vision you guys want. Emongg, you were one of those people competing in early pro Overwatch. What is your vision for like if you could now, like I think everyone's thinking about this now, what they want Overwatch esports to look like? What would it look like for you?
I think my guess is they're probably going to go very similar to what you're seeing in CS and like Valorant and like Apex. I think that's the cool part. What they've done a good job with now in those games specifically is you're starting to see a lot more of the co-streaming too, which obviously when we talk about streaming and co-streaming, I'm going to be biased, right? But I really like what they've kind of done with that, where like you're bringing like all those communities together into one to like enjoy those esports events. So like whenever you see like an ALGS, like you can go to like Apex and you can turn on Nicewig's stream and you're going to watch some great Apex, right? And there's going to be people coming on there, or you can go to another Apex streamer and watch really cool Apex stuff. So I think hopefully what happens is it ends up being kind of this league that you see in those other games. And Valorant does it too. Like Tarek does it all the time, right? With like the huge like co-streams and a lot of the other Valorant streamers. So I really would love to see that because bye. I would really love to see the
Yeah, just a quick note that Freedo had to leave, so he's
That's
got a
okay. I
time
just
budget.
saw
But yes, so
squares,
sorry.
like a smaller.
Yeah. So
Yep.
the names will go all whack, but carry on, Emongg.
Yeah. So I think that's probably the route they'll go down. It just seems to be what you're seeing in most games now, right? Like you're just seeing a lot of this, this really cool league, but like it's not like you see with OWL, it's like kind of like what you see with like ALGS, right? Or Valorant has different tournaments or CS has different tournaments. I think you'll probably see the same thing happen again with Overwatch. And it's an interesting time because I don't know what's going to happen with the teams, obviously, but I wonder if you're going to start to see other teams who have never been in Overwatch start to look into Overwatch now if they're allowed to be in there, right? And I'm not saying like you're going to see 100 Thieves go to Overwatch, but my point is like if they don't have that restriction anymore and you can actually bring in your own sponsors to Overwatch, because that's been an issue where like you couldn't even bring in a sponsor, right? It was based off of the league or like what your team was tied to that league. So I think it will go down that route. I don't know what teams we'll see, what we'll bring in, but I'm very curious to see what happens, and I hopefully it all works out because obviously there's a lot of awesome people involved in the league and involved on teams that I would love to see being able to continue to do what they love. So, yeah. Hi, Sully.
Yeah. Hello, Sully's.
He's passionate about this too.
Can we get some meows in chat as well? The cat is very much. He's like, yo, I want in. I spoke to a lot of the broadcast people, and I actually think they were very optimistic. And I think that they are also looking forward. I think it would be a huge shame because there is so much talent in the Overwatch scene, not just in the player side, but on the talent side. Like you only have to look and see how successful the people who start. It's like the same train, right? It's like the way that SUCs, and the Moons of the world like start off in Overwatch and then they become like these huge names elsewhere. It's like you only have to see the talent in the Overwatch broadcast side who've gone and dominated other games and become really beloved people in other games or just in the esports industry in general, to see that there's a lot of talent on that side. And it would be a real shame to see that just not be used. So I do look forward to it. But I'm also curious again, Flats, Fareeha as well. Flats, your ideal vision of Overwatch esports?
If I get to like choose, like Apex, I think Apex is the best viewing experience esport, bar none, hands down, not even fucking close. Being able to watch player POVs, flip through them, that was 2019 Overwatch. That was literally what we had minus comms. And people loved it. People actually paid Twitch extra for the service. So like people were willing to put their money where their mouth is to get that experience. And actually there was a whole underground thing where like people were like recording POVs so they could share it with each other because you couldn't see. There was no VODs of POVs. It was wild. It was a very wild time of Overwatch actually. But yeah, the thing is like that is what esports always was. Like it was like more person to person, and I think Emong's actually right, depending on how much of the reins they're willing to let go of, because I know stories of either streamer teams or whatever wanting to compete and they literally couldn't because they had like conflicting sponsors or they weren't allowed to stream Contenders games or whatever it was. And it's like that was when Contenders would get like 400 viewers, and it's like, dude, you don't want someone who like averages like 1,500 to 2,000 viewers streaming your games. Like you're really gonna be that petty about it? Are you serious? And there was a lot of people that happened to, and they just decided, nah, I'm just not going to play then. Like, screw it. Like, I'm not playing in this Contenders or whatever to make money. Cause like anyone who knows Contenders, it's nicknamed, Path to Poverty for a reason. Like you don't get paid at all. Once you got to Overwatch League, and that's why a lot of players were taking Overwatch League contracts, even if they maybe were worth more than they got. It's like, hey, it's your first opportunity to make money. You got to take it. And a lot of players, if you talk to them today, regret their first contract because they didn't know better and that was their only option. They didn't have any choices. So it really, really depends on what Overwatch decides to do. Because in the past, Overwatch forced out a lot of those old tournament organizers, the Alienware, the monthly Maywetlays, stuff like that. Those got pushed out. They didn't leave. They got pushed out. So like if you're a sponsor and you want to host tournaments, like you might be a little bit more skittish. You might not want to. And the same thing as like anyone was saying is about teams coming in, like they need their sponsors to make money. Like if they can't make any money, like why are they going to be pouring money into your game? Like it has to be mutually beneficial in some way, shape, or form. Or otherwise, it doesn't make any sense for them. Like they're not going to just lose, hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars just so you could get some, some metrics out of it. Because it doesn't make any sense to them. But if I get to truly pick, I would like it to be a lot like Apex, where you get to see everyone's POVs, you get to listen to their comms, hear the passion, the gamer passion, the howling, if you know the meme. Because that's where the juice is like when everyone's screaming it's last circle, last fight, and everyone's going fucking bananas trying to like hard calm, and then they win and they go win, and they just hear like everybody erupt in like holy shit, we fucking won, or like you can like, and I'm not saying like, it's the best thing, but there is emotion tied to watching the team that lost, and you just see like them like immediately everyone's heads just hit the desk, and it's like, yeah, you don't want to see them sad, but like that's how much it means to them, and that adds something to the game, and Overwatch didn't feel that way. It felt very corpa. It felt very like, oh well, we lost, GG, in a lot of ways, towards the end. And a lot of that juice is not really there. So hopeful, but this is probably one areas I'm not that optimistic at. Because it depends on who runs it, I guess. And if it's, a spun off of Overwatch League, who's to say it's not going to make the same mistakes?
Well, one thing I'll mention before I head over to Fareeha is that Overwatch League was Bobby Kotick's like pet love child, right? Like it was his like ego trip. So the one optimistic potential is that, well, that guy is gone. So I would also imagine that, business is being petty. They're not going to want to revive his poster child and give him any sort of chance of stealing credit of like, I was the one who started Watch League, right? So I would imagine they're probably going to try and deviate away from everything Bobby Kotick did. They're going to be like, no, fuck that guy. And esports has definitely been, I think, in a lot of teething pains at the moment. Like it's still a relatively fresh thing, and you've seen like other esports fail. Like League of Legends is having a lot of problems in like trying to make teams profitable, and like Valorant teams as well. Like a lot of the times they're not the money making machines that perhaps Bobby Kotick sold them as, or a lot of team owners think they're gonna be. So it will be interesting, and I think the only one universal theme is what you're talking about, is that the community has to be engaged, because there's no point manufacturing watch esports if it doesn't actually engage people who play the game, who will then want to spend money on the esports. So to that end, Fareeha, what is your kind of experiences kind of showing you about what you want to see moving forwards for Watch Esports, if at all anything?
How spicy should I get? Oh man.
It's up to you.
Okay. I loved watching Apex. Do you guys remember Apex? Not Apex Legends, but Apex as in like Lunatic High, like
Right.
OG Overwatch tournaments.
100%.
That shit was amazing. And you kind of felt a little bit of that at the inception of the Overwatch League, when we did have that replay viewer, when we could go in with those FOVs, watch Fleta just like crushing it on the far on the Widow. Insane. And I really feel like money and whatever like executive meddling really fucked it up, because the fact that Twitch was the significantly better platform for fans, for the drops, for the replay viewer, for basically like the culture of getting to just go into a chat and spam Zoe with the heart in the middle, like that was peak Overwatch League culture for me. And that was lost because they took this deal with YouTube of like $10 million a year, or however much it was, to have that platform exclusivity, to be like, you can only co-stream us if you are a approved partnered co-streamer on YouTube. And it's like, well,
It came later too.
that came later, huh? Man, it feels like money ruins so much of it. And there's also that other prong that pressures the industry a lot, because you need to acquire sponsors. But then it's like, how will these sponsors agree to these things when there's like all of these allegations coming out about the players, and about shady dealings that are going on, and about people getting canceled for like sometimes very, very concerning things. And it's like, okay, there's that other side of esports where it's like, this is a very new industry with very young people at the core of it. And it's all of these people who are very passionate, amazing players of the game, but they're like socially, I don't want to say underdeveloped, but that's kind of what it is sometimes. Like they're less socialized and they're less experienced in life, because they've dedicated so much of their time and their lives so far grinding this game and being like the best at it. And so you have this kind of balance of moderation and this balance of like supporting these young people in their personal growth and in terms of like their maturity and all that isn't present. And you see it somewhat in the teams, but it's like it's not where it needs to be, not by a long shot.
You actually make a really good point there. And you know what? I'll screw it. I'll say it. Like, I remember I'm friends with like Seagull and Shade, and you know they tell stories of the old days of Overwatch, and the amount of stories I've heard of like because like it was like Dallas, Shock, Outlaws, and a few others all lived in the same apartment building, and there was a while where like Seagull's wife Shade, nobody like it wasn't really like public at that you know that time, but she would literally make dinner for like all the players on like Dallas, Shock, Outlaws, like, and then there's one other team that was also in there because it was a bunch of 18-year-old kids thrown into an apartment building. Like, have fun, guys. Like, you know, like if you remember being 18, like you go out on your own, like you don't know shit. Like you really don't know shit. You know, and I don't think they really had the structure there for a lot of them. They were kind of just like thrown out there into the wild and like do what you got to do. You know what I mean? So, God, there's so much there from like before, and you're right. You're right on all those things. So I don't know. I hope it's better. That's all I can say.
Well, again, I think the journey of Overwatch has been learning and evolving, and I think that's what the new dev team are trying to do. So with any luck, that's what they will continue to do. Like if hopefully we're able to look back at the Overwatch League as a big lesson. I'm sure it'll be a huge lesson for esports as a whole, but hopefully Overwatch esports in particular can look back and learn these lessons about, okay, actually we can't do this. This is not feasible, both from a human point of view, but also profit point of view. So hopefully it gets better. And on that note, we'll head to concluding thoughts. And you guys know, or at least Flats and Fareeha know, but Emongg, we always try to end on an optimistic note, look forward into the future of like what's going to happen. So I'll ask you guys, what are you kind of most excited about coming to life from what we heard at BlizzCon, and like what is it that's exciting you? So I'll go to Emongg first. Emongg, what are you most looking forward to upcoming now that you've seen everything they have in store for us come in?
Ranked. Yeah. The ranked thing. Almost like I clear my voice. Okay, yeah, I'd say the rank stuff. I think the rank stuff is a huge part of trying to, on top of like I said, new heroes, all that. But like I think people returning, I think there'll be a lot of people who are very interested in seeing what a new ranked looks like in Overwatch. That's what I'm looking forward to, and it's a lot sooner than later. Right when they said early next year, initially I was like, oh well, March 31st, on the latest possible day of whatever. No, it's in February, so I'm excited. I'm looking forward to it, and I think it's going to be good. I mean, there might be some issues here and there with it, but overall, I think it's going to be good. I'm excited for it.
Actually, we didn't even mention the new rank, Ultimate. So are you hopeful for that?
And actually, you did say earlier that you think that GMs won't be able to stack. I think what will end up happening is I think GMs will be able to stack. I think Ultimate won't be able to stack. They might make it,
right.
Maybe they'll find a way to 3-stack again. I'm sure they're looking into ways to add that possibility, maybe increase the matchmaking. But I think that like the Ultimate top 500 range probably won't be able to stack. But my guess is that GM, well, maybe they will stack, but like 3-stack, not 5-stack. And I imagine like GM or below will have less of those restrictions.
Mm-hmm. So lots to potentially shake up the system there and make people happier. Flats, how about you?
Mine's a lot less tangible. It's the attitude change. The attitude change means a lot to me. We got to talk to so many different people, both like, from like the Overwatch team to like players, whatever. Like it was a sense of hope after the Overwatch panel. Like people were coming up and asking me so many questions on like, how'd you like this? Or what'd you think about this? It's like, oh my God, I was excited for this, whatever. Which was like, it was cool to see people's genuine excitement in the moment. But also, I can just tell you, like I mentioned it earlier, from like the first summit to like now, was like, it was finally like the peeling back the curtain, but there's still a glass fucking wall in the way. So like you can't interact with it. You just get to see it early, and you just get to like, like, oh hey, like that looks good, but like I'm concerned about these things. Like, yep, whatever, dude. But now it's like the glass doors have now opened too, and you get to kind of like interact and, I'll hopefully it doesn't throw them under the bus, but like right after they finished that presentation, a couple people walked over and said, "What'd you guys think? Did we miss anything?" I was like, wait, hang on. You're not looking for like a pat on the back. You're not looking for like, oh, like you like these systems. Like their first question was, did we miss anything? Like, is there something else that you need to add? Like that to me was like that's interesting. Like that's not the question I was expecting. You know what I mean? Because they know there's like a lot to get done. And I think we've seen enough history and people speaking out that either they're currently or were there formally over the last year. Plus there was like the acquisition. I'm sure that caused a lot of headaches and like projects to get slowed down. And those types of things are now gone. And like the Overwatch team is on record being the most like fucked with team by the big bad boogeyman. And now that guy's gone, it's like the handcuffs are off, you know? And I'm hoping that now that the handcuffs are off, we start to see even more than we had before. And I'm very cautiously optimistic as well because the way Phil spoke, the way Microsoft has positioned themselves with Blizzard, is Overwatch seems to be their main focus. I didn't see it like when they announced everything. Like the Overwatch stuff was like like they do the slanted things and it's like Halo, all the thing. Like they put Overwatch there for Blizzard. They didn't put WoW. They didn't put all like they put Overwatch, and I think that they think that that is their franchise that has the most potential because like WoW's always been there. Like WoW has the ability to go crazy as long as like they're giving the players what they want, which they're doing now. Overwatch though needs more resources, right? Like the whole reason why PvE failed was because they didn't have enough dev power. They just didn't. Like they had to make 2 games in one. They had to make a whole PvE game and the PvP game at the same time. They couldn't do it. They don't have enough people. And like if you go through like LinkedIn and stuff like that, you see tons of job listing. They don't have the manpower. But like I think Aaron even said that on stage is they've grown their team significantly since the start of Overwatch 2 and they're planning on going even further. So, we have a conversation about something like the heroes per year only being 3 heroes per year. Maybe that's something that gets stepped up to 4 or to 5 in a year from now. And it's like, if we want to talk about balance, whatever, someone's going to lose their mind somewhere and go, oh my God, but the balance, yeah, the balance is always going to be fucking broken when new heroes get put in the game. That's kind of tough shit. But like when you add new heroes, yes, it's okay that things can break, but like as long as the speed of things keeps moving, that's a good thing. So I know it's like not anything super tangible to sit on and hold, but it truly, 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 truly does feel that the handcuffs are off. They want to start doing things better. Obviously, they have to prove it, but this feels different than every other time in the past where we've gotten the old, oh, but things we're working on here. It's like you always kind of had that little like, really trust you that much. Like something's weird there. Something smells weird. This is the first time I don't have that giant red flag at the moment. So obviously I got to deliver. We'll wait and see. But I will say that they seem happy, and seeing people happy is typically a pretty good sign. So.
Yeah, I'll just add to that really quickly before we go to Fareeha, which is that every developer that I saw was very optimistic about Phil. Like, he went to the offices and they all said, everyone I spoke to was like, oh, he's really nice and he's actually like a real gamer. Like he really plays games, he really cares about games. He's not like Bobby Kotick who probably like feels
a
a bit
world of difference. Instead of
right.
having contempt for gamers and the whole world around them.
Exactly, right. So and also I noticed that like, when like previous owners or hierarchy were mentioned on BlizzCon and stuff, a lot of the developers would be like, oh. But then Phil came on, a lot of them were like, yeah, Phil, yeah, Phil. So like I think there's a shift in the mood from the Overwatch team, and hopefully that comes through on the development of the game. But Fareeha, what is your stuff that you're most looking forward to coming up?
It is very subtle, but like Flats just said, the fact that Overwatch was chosen as like the highlight game from Microsoft is very reassuring because they can see, and it's proof that they can see, that Overwatch is kind of like a PC with like a 4090 Ti with goddamn 128 gigabytes of RAM, just fucking decked out, the highest end CPU you could muster, and it has like a 200 watt power supply. and it's not enough, and they can see that. You know, it's like it's this powerhouse that's not being supported in the way that it should be, and they recognize it. They see the untapped potential, and the very fact that they do, it speaks volumes because it's going to be such a change from the previous years. And yeah, I'm just really looking forward to all the new stuff they're going to show us. The the lore, the potential collaborations on the way, and the changes to comp, because I haven't been motivated to play much of comp. You know, every couple seasons I'm just like, I'll get every roll up to GM. And I'm like, okay, what now? And now there's gonna be more stuff. And there hasn't been new stuff in that realm in so long. Like with the new weapons. I'm not the biggest fan of the emerald weapons, but they said that they're going to be like seasonal, so they're gonna change. And it's like, damn, more incentives. Let's go. We need that.
Yeah, I love it. I think, yeah, it's all, the signs were good. I'll just add on my POV, it's a little bit of a personal thing, but my feeling when I was in the stadium for the opening ceremony was jealousy a little bit of the other, of World of Warcraft, because the energy for World of Warcraft was unbelievable. It was like physically energizing. So to give context, for obviously not many of you listening will have been able to be at BlizzCon, and perhaps even less so at the opening ceremony, but I was, you know, on the top tier of the stands. And, you know, the good thing about Overwatch is we're not the bottom child. We're not Hearthstone, right? So there was like the games that they would be announced and people would respond like, yeah, you know. So
We're like
it'd be
number 2, I think.
maybe close and tied with Diablo. Like we're like there.
I think
You know,
we're above
like,
Diablo. Have you seen
You
what
think?
Diablo's been going through recently? I'd say we're above
I know they've
Diablo.
had their controversy. I'll just speak on the how it was received in my mind when they were talking about stuff. So, you know, there was like the Diablo thing. It was like, yeah, Diablo, new expansion. And then like Overwatch people were like, yeah, pretty good, looks cool. And then Hearthstone, it was like, yeah, crickets chirping, right? It was like one
That's
guy
so
in the
why-
crowd, like one guy out in the crowd, like, yeah, cool. And then, like, you know, World of Warcraft, like Chris Metzen came on stage and people were losing their mind, dude. It was like Jesus Christ had been reborn. You know, they were like crying, screaming, hold my baby, Chris. You know, like people were just loving life, and like the energy in there was so amazing. Like I physically felt empowered, right? Like I don't play WoW, but I was like, wow, I wish I was a part of this community, because they're loving life right now. They're like so energized. And that, I felt so jealous of that. I was like, I wish the Overwatch community was like this too. Like I want to be in a stadium full of people, which is what the World Cup was like a little bit. But I want to be in a room full of people who are like just purely in love with everything they're seeing about Overwatch, just purely happy, like psyched. All of them are like, you know, vibing out, camaraderie. So my hope is that come next BlizzCon a year from now, and hopefully I'll see all of you guys there, and many of you guys in chat, because I'm sure we all loved when people came up to us and said hi. It was really touching. But I hope a year from now when we're there, it's to see that kind of reception for Overwatch. People are like, yes, new thing that you're announcing. Yes, fuck yes, I love Overwatch. And I think that would be really awesome. So it might be a bit optimistic. It might be a bit copium, but I hope we can get there.
I was gonna say about WoW for you though. Like, keep in mind that like that was a long time coming for WoW too. Like they have been, it's been. I mean, I play a lot of WoW, and that's why I've been saying a lot of the WoW players are super excited now, because it's been a while. Like it wasn't like that for a lot of like usually like the same rotation of like how they announce stuff. So they're just pumped because like same thing that's kind of happening in Overwatch. Like they've been wanting these things and now they're seeing them. Like Season of Discovery is like a step in the right direction to what they want with Classic Plus, and they get all these expansion updates and a new storyline. And on top of that, Metzen is like their Jeff Kaplan from like original he just brings this energy that you just like you were there. You wanted to go and install WoW with Metzen's energy, right? Although I do want to say to Aaron has over the past years gotten so much more comfortable in these interviews and like everything he does. Like
Aaron's
really
brilliant.
like credit to him, because he like when he first went in there, people were like, oh, okay, we don't, you know, where's that like that passion? But Aaron has been great.
He's coming into his own.
Yeah, exactly. And I love to see that. Aaron's done an excellent job. I do want to point that out.
The Steam comment was like his moment of finally, like, to me, he just fully stepped into it. He's in. He's all in. Like,
What was the
those
Steam
are
comment?
so basically towards the end of like his thing, he was like, well, I am the director of the worst rated game on Steam at one point. So like And it's like, holy shit. Like, it was so funny. It was so good. Like it was like the tone, like the way he just comes out of nowhere because he's like, yeah, we're talking about like we've been listening to community feedback, we're improving, and we want to keep listening to the community, and like building upon that. Because we hear you, and I am the game director of the worst rated game on Steam at one point. It's just like, whoa, what the fuck? Like, so it was good. I didn't get to see Aaron though. I didn't get to talk to him. That's my one regret of BlizzCon. But I'm
Same.
assuming he was just as busy as we were. So
Well, and we
That's
didn't
like
get to see Fareeha either. We realized
I
that.
didn't get to seal. Yeah, we just never crossed paths. I
Yep.
was hunting cosplayers outside, and you guys were stuck inside.
Good luck finding
doing
people in that
whatever.
hotel in the lobby. Good luck on
Oh
that
my
one.
God,
That is
Oh my
Oh.
god, the
Yeah.
lobby was nuts. But
They
yeah,
were like they called me on the day of I think it was Saturday, and they were like, "Oh, hey, do you want to record for broadcast like a segment with the cosplayers again, like you did in Grand Finals?" And I'm like, "Yeah, of course." And then they're like, "Okay, cool. So we're gonna tell you a range of time, like a 5-hour range, and you're gonna just grab every cosplayer, and you're gonna meet us at the fountain." And I'm like, "Oh, okay."
holy.
It was a challenge, but one I'm happy I got to do.
right, and I think there was so much, again, there was so much energy in the cosplayers and stuff as well. It was really great. I think this is obviously the first live BlizzCon in a while, so having been to my first one now, I definitely hope that they keep doing them, and that it can be these nice moments for the community to connect to each other and feel that passion and love. So on that note, it was great seeing all of you, by the way. I loved seeing all my homies. Everyone was so nice. So I look forward to it. I look forward to an optimistic and hopeful future for Overwatch. And I hope that should we convene a year from now, it'll be even happier, even more delighted, having our World of Warcraft moment. So thank you to Flats, Emongg, and Fareeha for joining me. I appreciate you guys' company so much. Thank you for giving me your time. And is there anything else you want to say before I let you peace out?
We're so back.
What have I done?
What have you done?
We're so back.
Overwatch.
Yes, I was gonna say Emong's final word as the new guest on the podcast. Go again, and we're gonna transition out.
Overwatch.